Hi, Astral.
That's it. We're live. Hello, everybody. We're a little bit later than I thought we were going to be. We've got some technical problems. She's back now. Maria Wheatley couldn't get on her internet, so she's on the telephone with us right now. So we're going to do a little bit via the telephone. But just to say, obviously, I've got Maria Wheatley here with me on my telephone. We've got John Carey, Patricia, and Astral. So hello, everybody, and welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
And welcome to Maria Wheatley. It's a pleasure to have you on board, actually, because not that I'm a greatest fan on earth. I admit I'm not, but I have seen some of your stuff, and you. It's actually through John that I became to know you. I appreciate the stuff that you do, and I'm intrigued to hear more, and I'm pretty sure that everyone else is, actually. So, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, Maria?
Yeah, I'm a research author, and I've been an author for some time. I've written books on Avebury and some guidebooks on Stonehenge. I'm currently writing a big book on Stonehenge. I also teach things like dowsing and tarot and past life regression at myesotericcollege.com. So, yeah, I do things from like past life regression. I've just got a book out on a different branch of astrology that relates to past lives as well, that's just been published by Ozark Mountain Press. So I come from a kind of archaeological base. I've studied with Wessex archaeology. I've just completed an academic paper at Oxford University regarding the cosmology of Iron Age roundhouses. So I like to think I come from a left-right brain perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good to know. And just saying, how long have you been doing this then?
I've been dowsing now for about 25, 30 years, about half my life, really.
Yeah, your father was a dowser, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my father was a dowser, and we inherited the unpublished manuscripts of a master dowser called Guy Underwood, who published a book back in the day of, I think it was in about the 1960s, but unfortunately he'd passed over before it had been published, and the wrong manuscript went to print regarding earth energy. So in one of my books, Divine and Ancient Sites, I kind of recorrected Guy Underwood's work and brought that to the public's attention.
Yeah, that's nice. I remember I saw something that there was a bonfire, and a lot of these old they weren't maps, but they were like the ley lines of Britain, weren't there, that were being burnt on a bonfire. Is that correct? And someone managed to save them.
It was the manuscripts that were being burnt. Guy Underwood went far beyond ley lines, which is like a topographical. There are three major types of ley lines, but Guy Underwood went much further than that. He looked at Earth energies and what is called the geodetic system of Earth energies, which comprises of many different types of Earth energies that numerous other dowsers over the past 80 years have confirmed. So it was the manuscripts to do with the geodetic system of Earth energies and all of the surveys that showed these type of energies. And I went even deeper than Guy and looked at the different qualities of water, the different qualities of Earth energy, to forward and scientifically, in some instances, prove the validation of his work.
And not just that, you're into long barrows, elongated skulls.
Yes, I'm into the Neolithic period, and the Neolithic period of Great Britain, although that's being re-evaluated, is probably going to be far older than the so-called Neolithic. And long barrows fall into the Neolithic period of around sort of 5,500 years ago, in the UK anyway. So there was a lot of different kind of Neolithic monuments. You've got long barrows, you've got stone settings that were Avebury and Stonehenge, for example. Then they built causewayed enclosures and Cursus monuments. So the long barrow falls into that much bigger picture of the Neolithic building program in Great Britain.
And also, you've found some elongated skulls?
When I was researching one particular area of the Salisbury Plain, which is lands that is being managed by the military, the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, I was very much drawn to it through a dowsing procedure, but nonetheless, when I started to investigate it, turned out to be the longest long barrow in northwest Europe. And normally the long barrows are for communal burials, sometimes up to, 40, 50, and more burials, all put in the skulls and the long bones, some vertebrae, and sometimes four bodies would go into the chambers inside of the long barrows. But this one particular long barrow, its primary burial, that means its first burial that went in there, was of an elongated skull. And when I went to Cambridge University to track the skull down, it turns out that it was a long-skulled person which hadn't been seen since the 1930s. And then I realized that I had made a major find of the Neolithic period.
That's quite amazing, isn't it, with Brian Forrester sort of finding those skulls in South America, but they're not there, just there, they're here as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, before I kind of discovered the Neolithic, I think she was a high queen or a high priestess. She was certainly, a member of an elite group, because only the elite went into the long barrows in the Neolithic. You did have normal flat graves like we go into. So, there was a proportion of royalty or a shamanic kind of ruling elites that were there that went into them. So I realized then, I'd made a big discovery, and it was around Stonehenge, which is even better, because when you go to other environs, such as the West Kennet Long Barrow near Avebury Henge, which contains the world's largest stone circle, there was more round skull people and only one slightly long skulled person that was there interned.
Well, I find oh,
sorry,
I
was going to say these skulls. Didn't Brian Forrester say that they came from the Black Sea region, like Crimea, that area of the world?
There has been no DNA testing on any long skull person of the British Isles. Yeah, Brian's work, I mean, he messaged me, prior to the results and told me that, because I'd be taking Brian round Stonehenge, actually, when he comes to the UK. He's requested that, that I take him round. So yeah, that was the DNA of those particular skulls. Now, it could be the possibility that the English, the ancient British skulls have that DNA encodement. It could be something else. There has been some later Bronze Age DNA results come out of, I think it was Oxford University, recently, regarding the later Bronze Age people. And the Bronze Age is circa 2500 BC. To the middle age of about 1500 BC. So that's a kind of peak of the Bronze Age. And a lot of those people came from Europe, and especially the Netherlands has been the recent DNA analysis of those. I mean, I'm very open-minded to further studies, but I don't think that they plan to do the long-skulled collection.
No. It would be nice to see, actually, DNA test them, all of them. I mean, every single one of them. And find some, traits, where they came from, are they related? Oh, this is the brother of this skull, and this is the mother of this skull, that kind of thing. I mean, I know we can do that kind of, research and go digging, but how long it will be before they actually come out with the truth for us, before they actually come out with, this is so far as what we've got, insofar as the knowledge that we've gleaned from what we can. I mean, give it to the public, man. That's what we need to do, because the public, we are people down to earth, and we can solve a crossword puzzle, and some people are unable to solve a crossword puzzle. And it's the same thing with things that we find in everyday life, like these skulls. Let one person look at them, they haven't got a clue, but let someone else look at them, they could tell you a whole heap of stories about them, man, Well,
I think you're partly correct and partly incorrect, because, to be fair to the university, some of those long-skulled people were glued back together because of bad transportation back in the Victorian era. So that's called a contaminated sample. It's so contaminated where it's all been kind of glued together that you couldn't do a DNA test on that skull. Do you see what I mean? But certainly you could do DNA testing on the more intact skulls in their collection. But it's really hard to even, see these skulls. I mean, I got in because of my college that I run. It's affiliated to the Association of British Correspondence Colleges. Otherwise, a member of the public, it's very difficult to request these fines. You have to be doing a research paper, or you have to be, a kind of university buff, to be frank.
Yeah.
I think this is the comment that Astral made, that we need more people like ourselves, like independent researchers, to get involved, to help find answers to these puzzles. But what I think is really intriguing is all the work that you do, Maria, is setting the scene, really, because obviously in the future we probably will not say probably, we will find more of these skulls. We will find more unusual finds relating way back when, that they won't be contaminated by sort of establishment archaeologists, but new science will make sure that these things are not contaminated, they are brought out of the ground carefully and so on. So I think exciting times ahead, really, to just find out just exactly what happened back in our prehistory.
Well, I'm thrilled to say that I've also made some other major discoveries now across northwest Europe, which I'll be speaking about in the future, not now, because I want to write it up in a book. But I think I have found a major missing link to do with our prehistoric past.
Will this come up in the Glastonbury Symposium, or is this going to be beyond that?
No, I'm going to write it up first, and then I will discuss it, because again, there's to really fully understand the prehistoric past, you've got to be a bit of a sleuth. Yes. I mean, for instance, I recently, as I mentioned, been on an Oxford course that gives you access and privy to different papers that the general public may not be privy to. Mm-hmm. So within searching, every now and again you come up with bingo, and I've come up with a major 3 to 4 major finds.
But why is it that you come up with it and the sort of the academics there haven't, or have they? And they keep quiet about it?
Looking for that. They're not looking for that, because you get funding. For example, the dates are going to go back. The dates are going to be pushed way back pretty soon, because one archaeologist, and she has a paper to come out, so I'm not going to mention names or anything or why, but it will be found that most Neolithic monuments are Mesolithic. Mm-hmm. That means they'll be going back to about 10,000 BC, in an archaeological world. I mean, that's going to be happening pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the way, isn't it? Because everything here says 4,500 years. That's what they date it at, and anything that's older is always 4,500 years old.
Well, that's what, the old school 1930s, 1940s and 50s archaeologists wrote. You've got a new young enthusiastic archaeologists that aren't buying that picture anymore. So, I think they are far more exciting and less restricted than their predecessors.
That's great news. That's good news.
Yeah, something that. Sorry, I was going to say something that we need nowadays. That this new look at it's so staid, isn't it? Look at the old the people in Egypt that people that are a bit of balls, for example, and said, "Hey, this is not a tomb. This is something else. Let's investigate. Let's get as many people as we can to research this stuff, and we'll get to the basics, get to the fundamentals, get to the the beginning, find out what it really was used for, or let's discuss many areas that it could have been used for. I mean, it's a think tank. Why are we here? We're here to learn things. We're not here to say it's a tomb and that's that. No, I'm not buying that shit. We need to be critical thinkers, and we need to think critically. I yield the floor. Sorry, go on, John.
No, it's fine. I totally agree. I think what's basically happened in the past, and we've got to be careful we're not guilty of it, is turning speculation into fact. I mean, they've come up with this idea that it was a tomb for the pharaohs and all these other things that they say it long enough and loud enough, it becomes factual. But now we're beginning to, again, I'll interested to hear what Maria has to say. I think I just caught fact that she said just come back from Egypt, maybe find out what she's been up to there. But I think it's obvious. You just need to look at the Great Pyramid in Egypt and any of the other pyramids, and you can see they're so amazing. It's quite clear they're built for some other amazing purpose, and that this is. And I'm really interested to hear how we're starting to push the dates back, because I always believe that all these things, or this civilization, was probably around 13,000 years ago, and destroyed by a huge tsunami, a huge disaster. I think we know it was the Younger Dryas global event about 10,500 years ago. So I think this is all happening probably around, my guess, and of course it's only a guess, only speculation, about 13,000 years ago. But it's interesting to see how we're starting to push dates back as far back. And the point that Karen mentioned, that Stonehenge built around 4,500 at the beginning of the Neolithic, as they would call it, period. There weren't enough people around the area at the time to build such an amazing structure. And also the fact that Stonehenge, this whole area called the Wessex complex, was huge. It was a huge area of buildings and structures that have long since disappeared. And I'm always intrigued with Maria, how she manages to twist the MOD's arm to get onto the Salisbury Plain. I do not know. But this is what I think is amazing about people like Maria. She's able to get into things, say, Oxford University, Cambridge University. I'm just wondering when you're going to get into the Vatican. I hope you can get to the Vatican.
To get in there.
John,
I do know the clerk of the Bishop of Verona. I've taught him Templar codes of their churches in Italy. So one step.
You got one foot in the Vatican, Maria. I'm impressed.
John, I just want to say, I don't care how Maria gets into these places, as long as people like Maria continue to get into these places. That's the main thing, you know. So I take my hat off to you, Maria. Well done.
That's why I'm pleased. I'm pleased that Maria's managed to keep going with us, because I want to highlight just how a remarkable person she is, from the point of view of not stopping, investigating up to a point and saying, "Oh, I can't go any further." Oh dear. Just keeps pushing and pushing, and it's people like her, Ashley, that you're talking about, people like her that we need and we have, that are helping us really, move the boundaries and make these amazing discoveries. And I do think that.
Yes, thanks.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you for your kind words. But yeah. I really do feel that, very shortly the truth about the landscape will come out, because sometimes it's the most simplistic thing that's found that makes people think a little bit differently, and that time is fast approaching. So I really feel very excited about the future for our, what I call the holy history of the land. Mm-hmm. It's not history to me, it's holy, it's sacred, because these people were absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Far more advanced than we are. Exactly.
Maria, I get from you you're kind of a very spiritual, earthly person. You like your chakras, and you like the vibrations of the earth, the frequencies, the wavelengths. Am I correct in thinking that? It's a bold assumption, I know. That's just what I'm getting from what I've seen of your videos and what have you.
What I do is, I'm a very grounded person, and also I'm a very spiritual person as well. Yeah. So when I look at earth energies as well as lays and grid lines, I like to either know or not know, or prove or disprove some theories, and that's what I do as well. I like to kind of introduce concepts to people that are, especially younger people, and to say, but here's the evidence behind it, because people like ourselves may not need any evidence. We may be quite happy to have a belief system. But some people out there really need a little bit more evidence and support. So I hope that with the experiments that I've done at Avebury and at Stonehenge and at the Rollright Ring, I'm just going to have a book entirely dedicated to a stone circle called Rollright, because where Avebury and Stonehenge are ruinous circles, they've lost their circular shape. They don't behave like a stone circle should properly. So I've looked into, the function of a stone circle and how certain earth energies behave, with a lot of good evidence to back that up as well. So yes, I'm spiritual, and I'm also, quite practical as well, because I really do feel that to move forward, it has to be kind of a left brain, right brain approach to be have a holistic understanding of our distant past.
Yeah, on our research on Sun and Moon, it seems that there are all these electrical arcings all across the land, everywhere, where these electrical arcings could have been, some of them, the actual arcings are absolutely enormous. But if you have a look at Avebury, they said that basically was a moat, but it's not. It's an electrical arcing, and there's an electrical arcing where Stonehenge is. They're on energy lines then. There's energy there.
Energy currents and energy lines and grid lines, yes. And also you have what's called earth voltages, and they can influence a polarity, for example. So, I mean, you have lots of things combined, plus a lot of underground water that's emitting negative ions. So you combine a kind of lot of different energies together. That's when you put a standing circle of standing stones around, then it will behave in a particular manner. And it can influence not just that part of its own environment, but it can influence miles in the distance. And that's what I've been looking at for Rollright, is to see how the influences extend across the landscape through the circular shape. And that's why a lot of our sites here in the UK were circular. It produces particular energy patterns.
Yeah, almost like some of the stone corn circles, or those circles that turn up. They actually are the patterns of what maybe could have been happening in the Avebury circle with energy.
Sorry, Karen, to interrupt you. I actually believe that those. Why am I echoing? Those crop circles that we see, they're formed by energy from Mother Earth. That's what I'm led to believe anyway. Whether it's true or not is another matter, because I've yet to see one form before my very eyes and film it whilst it's forming. But until I see one forming before my eyes, I'm led to believe, based on the pattern, the geometry, it's this sacred geometry, time and time again, that we see. Like spirals, it's Fibonacci, it's prevalent everywhere that you look in nature. That's my assumption. I'm led to believe that these crop circles are formed by Mother Earth, in some sort of they just appear overnight. How can it be, boom, whacked it, and it's there? It must be some sort of magnetic, electrical impulse, or, you understand what I mean? Do you know where I'm going? Please say yes. I yield the floor.
That was for you, Maria.
Could be. I don't investigate crop circles, so it could be, it couldn't be. If I had some evidence for something, I would present that, but I haven't, because I haven't studied them. My forte is megaliths and stone circles, not crop circles.
No, but I'm just thinking about, Maria, you have checked out like there's vibrations, there's frequencies. These stones give off, resonance. Mother Earth gives off, resonance, whatever it's 7.83 or something, isn't it? Hertz. Everything gives off a frequency. Yeah, Schumann. Everything's given off a frequency. And these crop circles are because of a frequency that the Earth is giving off. And because it's interacting with whatever it's interacting with, the plasma, the ether, whatever it is you want to call it. And then these crop circles can be formed, just like you see a whirlwind appearing over a dusty desert or whatever, tornadoes and things. You can see them because of the dust, the particles that are collected. If there was no dust there and particles, you couldn't see it. It was invisible. But nevertheless, it's still there. And I think it's the same with crop circles. You can't see them, but they appear, these whirlwinds, and they make the little spirals and forms, and then the tornado, the torus field, whatever it is that's created it, it's gone further somewhere else, doing something else.
I think I'm inclined to be on Maria's side that crop circles is an area that we tend to steer a little bit clear of, and just try to focus on something you can almost get to grips with. For example, this ley lines. I'm most intrigued with this, and I'll ask Maria in a moment, because obviously you often hear them called earth energies and ley lines and so on, and they seem to have distinctive lines crossing key places and so on, and grid lines and so on. And the question I'm really asking, Maria, is are they natural? Are they earth lines, or are they some kind of ancient Wi-Fi system?
Yeah, I've often called it a Wi-Fi system only when the stones convert the earth energy into aerial energy, because you see, I'll come on to lays in a moment, but just to be clear, you see what a standing stone does, if you route it into an energy system, be that a lay, grid, earth voltages, whatever, it can convert that earth energy into an aerial energy and beam it across the landscape. That's what my work has proved with Rodney Hale and his equipment at Avebury Henge, and we chose a stone that was in situ and not in concrete, because as we all know, Avebury Henge is reconstructed and a lot of the stones have been re-erected and set in concrete. Now, one of the top geomancers called John Michel, he was the one that discovered the most very well documented lay called the St. Michael Lay, which starts at Carnlough and finishes at Hopton on the Norfolk coast, and Avebury Henge is at the exact centre of that lay, for instance. He noticed that a lot of the lays really do point to celestial events like the rising of the Beltane sunrise and the setting of the Samhain, the Halloween sunset. That's the Michael line. So he felt that they were engineered by mankind to target an event, and that wasn't natural. That was, engineering skills by our ancient ancestors. With my research with the long-skulled people of the Stonehenge environs, I noted that all of the starts of the lay systems and the ley lines, for example, begin with causewayed enclosures, cursors, monuments, and long barrows, and that's the long-skulled people's monuments. And then later, much, much later, because don't forget, a site like Stonehenge took 1,000 years to build, and so did Avebury Henge. It wasn't built overnight. It's what's called a composite archaeological site, meaning it spans, 1,000 years. That's like it being started in 1066, and I'm finishing it now. That's the massive time span that they follow. So it seems to me, in my research, that the long-skulled people started and initiated the ley line network, and then the more rounder-skulled European, what's called the Beaker people by some, then put their sights on it. Then much, much, much later, from about 750 BC to 43 AD, the Iron Age Druidic peoples put their hill forts and their ceremonial circles on that lay system. So if you go back to origins, if you go back to beginnings, then it's the long-skulled people and their wisdom that created the system is something that I promote, and I certainly say the evidence strongly suggests that they initiated this.
Wow, so these elongated skull people are far more important then.
Definitely, and I think their shape of skull may have even, this is complete conjecture and speculation, but it's something I have sensed when I was around and in very close proximity to the female long-skulled woman, is that they could have even had another chakra, or they had a very expanded third eye crown chakra, because I feel that they were so far advanced for their time. For example, take Avebury Henge, for example. The largest stone there in England is sited there. It's over 100 tons. It forms a stone setting called the Cove Stones, which is the central feature of the northern inner circle. Now, all the other stones around that feature, which was another stone circle of about 30 standing stones, creating the northern stone circle, were put up about 500 years later. You know this because of the archaeological layering system. So when we go back to the origins of Avebury, those heaviest stones, the largest stones, were put up by the long-skull people. And then later, the stone circle was created by the more round-skulled people. It's clear through the definite evidence in our layering system. Even if you put the timeline back to Mesolithic and you call it what you like, that is the sequence of construction. Avebury started as a few stone settings. Do you see what I mean? And then it got built up and built up and built up. So, so I have total admiration for this civilization who's only just come into light, and some of their other discoveries and civilization will be proved to be a wonder of our ancient past, I am sure.
Maria, what's your speculation? I know it's speculation as to what happened to them, the long-skulled race.
Well, initially for my book, the elongated skulls of Stonehenge, I thought they had all been murdered in a genocide, but that's only half the picture. So I'm currently researching the fuller picture, but I don't think it's as simple as I first put out, which was, a few years ago now, and I've done more research since, and I'm doing some research now. So I think the picture will change, and it's not as simple as when I first said they all got murdered. Some of them got murdered, that's for sure, around Stonehenge. I mean, you've got what's called smashed skulls, you've got a right-hand assailant that hit somebody on the back of the head, you've got beheadings at Stonehenge. So yes, they're towards the final stage of their reign. Some of them did get murdered, but that is only a small part of the story.
I'm a great one for conspiracy theories. Do you think this was a conspiracy by the elites, if you like, or the establishment at the time to destroy this race?
The powers that be?
Yeah. Was there a concerted effort to get rid of these people? Because obviously they were scared. The establishment, the elites, if you like, were frightened of what they knew and how they could upset their particular take on civilization, humanity.
Well, I mean, it was it's like what we have now in a way. I mean, during the transitional period of the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, the what's called the Copper Age, you had a mass migration across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've got these migrations happening, and there's again masses of DNA evidence for that. You've only got to look at the latest report in Nature magazine that was out in, I think it was either February or March, showing these DNA discoveries. It's like there was this big kind of movement across Europe, so that wasn't confined just to the British Isles.
Mm-hmm.
There was different cultures coming in and moving across Europe.
Yeah, wow. Do you, and this is a daft question, but do you think long-skulled people still exist today, somewhere?
Well, that's an interesting, question, which, I would like to think that there is, but again, here's the thing: not everybody in the Stonehenge environs did get murdered. There seemed to be a crossover into marriage and things like that as well going on with these ancient civilizations. So it wasn't all kind of cutthroat and murder and that sort of thing. I think that there's certain places across Europe which were kind of these key areas that allowed a kind of coming together of these different types of people.
Mm-hmm. On the planet that would have been allowed to just be an area where they would thrive, but it doesn't seem to be. There's no history or there's no evidence of that at the moment, is there?
Of what, John?
There's no evidence of this type of race of people being allowed to thrive or survive or dominate a particular area.
Well, currently it seems, that they are very elusive.
Yeah. For example, in Africa, there's obviously the Zulu tribe. They're very tall, and I think there was something another.
The Maasai warrior.
Yeah, that's the one. I beg your pardon. Well done. Yeah, so that's going to be a race of very tall race that obviously it's fairly isolated, but survived intact. Anyway, it was just a just a curious question.
Just to be very clear, the elongated people of Stonehenge were very short.
Oh, interesting.
When you look at their leg bones, it's called a long bone. They were quite short in stature.
Right.
When you say short, are you talking 5 foot, or are you talking like 4 foot, or even lower?
Yeah, that's a good question. The women were about sort of 5 feet tall, and the men probably no bigger than 5'4", 5'6" tops.
Okay.
No, they were quite short.
Yeah, they were. I mean, so let's get this into context. You've got short people with long, elongated type of long skulls moving gigantic stones.
Can I ask you?
Even more of a wonder than if they were tall and strong.
Can I ask you, Maria?
They weren't giants.
No.
Not in the Neolithic period. When you look to the evidence of the bones around the area, the Neolithic were definitely short. As soon as you get a long bone, a thigh bone, you can easily ascertain the height of the person. So in the Neolithic, they were quite short. When it comes to the discoveries of the Bronze Age Barrows, now that's 1,000 years ahead. Yeah, we've gone now from 3,000, say 300 BC, 1,000 years has elapsed, and now we're looking to the finds, in particular Barrows that surround Stonehenge that are around Barrows. Then when you look at the finds in there, you do get descriptions of very tall people. But they never said exactly how big they were. You know, like they didn't say 7 feet tall or 8 feet tall. They just said very tall finds. So that was much later than the kind of Long Barrow Neolithic period.
Can I ask you, Maria, these skulls that have been found, are they related to these what we call long barrows, or are they related to some other kind of barrow?
No, all the long skull people were found in long barrows, and all the round skulled people were found in round barrows. And that was kind of, a discovery that an antiquarian had made a kind of flippant comment about. And I've taken that research to another level, and I'm suggesting that it was the shape of the head that decreed the shape of the monument. So when we look at round stone circles, they were created by the round skull people. When we look at the elongated cursus monuments, they were kind of maybe inspired by their own head. We certainly know by the time of the Druidic period of the Iron Age priesthood that, the skull was revered. Totally. It was, really almost worshipped. So I really do feel that the skull, those higher chakras, if we will, they inspired a monumental building phase.
Interesting. It's interesting, actually, to find out that, what you're saying there, the long skulls belong to the long barrows, or are linked to them, at least in some ways. And also, like regular round skulls are linked to the round barrows, Karen, that's your neck of the woods there, right, where all this is taking part. You're in the center of the universe, apparently.
Yeah, just to explain to Maria, I used to live in Hungerford. I mean, I live in Thatcham now, so I know you know where I'm living. And I've been out there quite a few times, but I obviously didn't realise, like you just explained to me about the long barrow. That's the elongated heads. That's amazing.
Yes, it was a find, that when I looked into the archaeological evidence, it was definitely inspiring monumental shapes, and that had never before been recognised anywhere on the earth. So, but I really do feel that, these discoveries that I've made was once I kind of connected with her at Cambridge University, which some people may find quite, profound. But when I really was in close proximity to her, it was almost like there was this kind of unsaid spiritual bonding. And then I found it easy to make more discoveries. as if, there was a kind of guiding presence for me meeting her, being a woman as well, and recognising the woman's story behind Stonehenge and places. Because if you look to the first phase of Stonehenge, for instance, which consisted of 56 blue stones going around in a perfect circle, then, which was at the end of their kind of reign of the long-skulled people. But nonetheless, all of the kind of geometry of that, the centre of that, was previously founded by the long-skulled people. Now, beneath those stones of the 56, Aubrey holes as they're called, phase 1 Stonehenge, the majority of burials were of women. That's an actual fact. So, I mean, I visualised the first stage of Stonehenge to be very much a goddess temple with priestesses, probably being worshipped or having ceremony under moonlight.
Is this fertility? Like, I went to Stonehenge. I mean, I went to Avebury, and there was this picture up, a painting up in this sort of knick-knack shop, or a bit more sort of to do with antiques. And I asked this person, I said, "What's that painting of?" They said, "Avebury." That basically it was the reproductive organs of a woman, and so basically they did this fertility dance, like up the entrance into the uterus, up to the ovaries. That's what the stone circles were. Do you believe that or not?
That's Michael Dames's interpretation of Stonehenge, of Avebury. Sorry, I mean it's an interpretation. I think there's much more going on than just fertility at these sites. I mean, when we look to the work of other authors, and a late American author, for example, John Burke, he noticed that at certain points around Avebury Henge that you had these kind of pits dug out, and you had large pits at Stonehenge, for example, as well, within the actual heart of the site. And when it was analysed what was in these pits, it was ember, which is kind of Neolithic prehistoric wheat. No need for Monsanto there, pure organic wheat. But nonetheless, when it was, analysed, that's what it was. And what John Burke did here was a series of quite remarkable and stunning and astonishing experiments, because he noticed that when you place wheat today in these environs, and I suggest it's down to the geospiral geodetic earth energy pattern, because when you place that onto that earth energy pattern, which is the harmonic surface pattern of deep underground water in the earth, then it was found, and John Burke incidentally didn't say that, he just put the wheat in the environ, but I'm almost positive it's down to the geospiral because it emits an electromagnetic signal, intensifies the environ. When he took that to his laboratory and grew it, it grew twice as fast and twice as strong. So there could be a very practical side to these ancient sites in food production, harmonic food production, as well as a more spiritual side. And at the end of the day, authors such as myself and John, we can have an interpretation about a site which may be 100% correct, or may be part of a picture that we're all contributing to. I think there's far more to these sites than just fertility.
I agree. Yeah,
I was a bit relieved that I thought that maybe I'd found out what that they were about, but in the meantime, obviously, that's how I started talking to John. Really, was that Silbury Hill was a pyramid, and that's not talked about.
Yes.
What's your feeling on that? Obviously, because we've got John sitting here, and John's been inside it.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I've known John for quite a few years now, haven't I, John?
yes.
I can't think, but quite a few years, and I fully respect John Cowie's work, and he's done a lot of research that kind of is quite in harmonic with my own research to do with negative ions that I've measured all around ancient sites, including places like Stonehenge, around Barrows. I've done a lot of tests there, so yes, it is, and it also Silbury Hill provides a key point on a massive ley system that links Avebury to Stonehenge, that aligns the planets above to different sites below. Contributes to a wider picture.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Do you think Avebury or Silbury Hill, Maria, is like some sort of a centre for all of this?
That's quite possible. I mean, it contains the world's largest stone circle, so it could be. Or could it be that we're all missing a bigger, wider picture? So, you know, we can say that's a centre, you know, Stonehenge was a centre, Avebury was a centre, but, you know, maybe the ancients had a different interpretation. Like I say, you know, it's all down to interpretation, really, and I think it's quite exciting that we're looking at these ideas.
Yeah, and like we're doing now, you know, it's discovery, talking and spreading the message, you know, and for people to like dig into things. I mean, okay, I've heard about you, I've heard about John Cowie, but there must be millions. There are millions, if not billions, of people that have never heard about you, you know, and the things that you guys delve into. I just think that if more people looked into this kind of stuff, you know, then we would progress as humanity. You know, we would surely progress, because when we look back to how the ancients did things, it was all to do with like astronomy. We looked into the skies. It was all to do with, you know, the seasons. Well, basically, that's all we had. The seasons, you know, for temperate changes in our weather, and the stars to tell us where we were in the year. Other than that, what did we have? Each other and our spirituality, you know. So I mean, I just think that it's nice that we can find out these type of things, and the work that you're doing, Maria, I mean, it's immense. And I remember hearing something about 6 days after a full moon, that's when the moon is at its most strongest. You've done some tests to do with that as well down at Stonehenge.
Well, it's to do with the Earth energies. The moon triggers particular Earth energy patterns, like the geospiral pattern I've just mentioned, that is at the heart of most ancient sites. So when the moon is at near enough first quarter or 6 days, the rotational pattern of certain spiral patterns in the ground switch rotation. So that's what the moon does there, and the ancient Druids, their year started 6 days after the new moon, after the equinox and things like that. So they only pick mistletoe 6 days after a new or full moon, for instance.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one other thing as you're there? There's a question that somebody wanted me to ask you, but I'll ask you that one in a minute because it's different. But this bit about Avebury, do you believe that there was 2 circles there? Because that's what they tell you when you're there, that there was another circle, and it basically got knocked down, and the people there built the houses out of it. It was a few hundred years ago. Do you believe that? Because that's just going to Avebury and talking to people there. That's the bit I've picked up, though.
Where do the people get information from? And if you go back to the source, and you go back to an antiquarian called John Aubrey, that was riding with Charles I in the 1600s, he was one of the first to document Avebury, and he saw it before it was kind of smashed, you know, to pieces. So he recorded it as a possible northern circle and a definite southern circle that was surrounded by a gigantic outer circle that was fed by avenues, is what he described, and he drew several things. And a couple hundred years later, you had the Reverend William Stukely, who started to draw maps. They were very wrong, actually. I mean, it's all over the internet, his Serpent Temple, but that's actually an inaccurate drawing. He fixed it a little bit, but nonetheless, he did record certain features very, very accurately. So we're getting this information from the early antiquarians.
And also something else as well in those stones, they are layered. Like if you put dowsing rods on them, the dowsing rods move as you go up. Like there's like 3 layers in these stones that are different. They've got different energies in them.
Well, that was, you know, one of my discoveries with the energy bands, with the stand-in stones. I mean, the art of dowsing is really how to interpret that which you find, because anyone can get a dowsing rod to move. The kind of a master dowser would be able to tell you exactly what you found. But yeah, if you get a dowsing rod, which I've shown 1,000,001 times at places like Avebury, but again, it's much more better in a stone circle. You know, the energies are 10 times stronger. Then the dowsing rod will move at certain points that represent energy bands.
And what do you think about that then, with the stones with these different energies in them?
That's because, like I said earlier, if you root, which I have again proved to a certain degree, if you put a standing stone into an energy pattern, it will do that. It will produce energy bands. But if you just put like a standing stone into no energy, it's a standing stone. It will not have those energy bands, for instance. So, I mean, when it comes to places like ancient Egypt, and you put an obelisk into, you know, a very strong geodetic energy pattern, or crossing points of lays, or crossing point, ideally, of grids and lays, then, you know, again, that behaves in a particular manner.
Do you find what's happening now exciting or frustrating, that there's such a lack of proper history? That, you know, I mean, thank goodness for people like you and John Carey and Brian Forrester, but are you frustrated or excited about what's happening?
I'm very enthusiastic about the unfolding picture ahead. I think it's all going to be moving forward at a very, very good pace, because no longer are the old archaeological models being listened to. So, which is just an interpretation anyway, you know, their ideas about what something looks like. So I'm really excited.
I think.
Can I just add to that? One of our favourite archaeologists, Maria and I's favourite archaeologist, Jim Leary, and he comes up with some really wonderful ideas for Sylvia Hill. And of course, as time evolves and we start to, people like me and Maria start to explain things and find things and show things, their answers become more and more outrageous. And I won't go into the details and so on, to the point where people begin to think, wait a minute, they're beginning to lose their credibility. And so I think this is an important point that I feel, along with Maria, I feel like her, I feel really excited about the future development, because these guys on all fronts are losing their credibility. You know, Egyptologists are losing their credibility on what their theories are, and so on and so on. And I think, Karen, we touched on it a little bit earlier, that a lot of these things were to do with some kind of religious ceremonies and often to do with death. And if you look at it, it's just, you know, where do they get these ideas from? It's, again, total speculation. There's no proof. There's no... It could be quite the opposite end of the spectrum. If you look at it, it could be to do with birth.
Well, that's it, John. Imagine, right? You sat in you sat around a campfire, summertime, you know, and you sat discussing things with people, and one person can come up with one theory, and someone can come up with another theory. You're both true. You're both correct, because you both have a view on something that is a theory, totally theory. That's a good thing about we as like truthers, that, you know, all of our theories, well, suddenly our theories can become a fact, because, you know, we can get to the bottom of something and say, hey, this is how it must have been like this. You know, we can keep going. Obviously, we can keep building theories upon theories, but building a theory, you ain't getting anywhere. You're just building a castle in the sky, like out of sand. You know, it's not going anywhere, is it?
Yeah,
well,
I think
we need. Sorry, yeah, go on.
I think the key thing really, again, Maria's hot on this as well, is new discoveries. You know, I think we're going to find new things. The ground penetrating radar equipment attached to satellites are beginning to highlight areas, and then we've got to get to these areas before the establishment or the established archaeologists get there, because we will find things. We're going to prove, because we can't prove them at the moment. We're speculating all the time, but again, just touching on, I interrupted you there, sorry, that we are beginning to find and touch on things and beginning to prove what we're more likely what we're saying to be true than what the ancient or the previous establishment archaeologists are beginning to say. So it's just a question of, we're in exciting times with technology improving all the time, science improving all the time, that we're going to find new discoveries that can't be hidden. In the past, these things were hidden, or they were manipulated or even destroyed to protect the status quo, to protect the establishment ideas, which of course is to do with church and religion. This is very powerful areas, very powerful lobbies that you know, they were powerful, made huge fortunes in the Roman Catholic Church and so on. We see it even now, and so they weren't going to give this up. So whenever anything was discovered, anything was found out, the person was either discredited, ridiculed, and they brought out the famous phrase we're using today. There was Project Fear and Project grade, and all sorts of these projects were initiated to make sure that people were kept in line or kept away from the truth. But we're slowly discovering the truth. Now, what is the truth? And again, coming back to your comment about being around the campfires and so on, having these discussions, we all kind of got our ideas what the truth may be. My truth is I believe we came from an alien visitor, arrived on the planet about 13,000 years ago. And if you think that's possible, then the whole concept of these ancient monuments being for religious ceremonies goes out the window, because if you come from another planet, the first thing you're going to need to do is to produce an environment and an atmosphere that will allow you to develop.
Yeah,
And we're already planning to do this on the moon. And what we're planning to build on the moon, guess what? A pyramid.
But John, sorry to say, but I cannot help but think all of these monuments, take Stonehenge, Avebury, you've got the pyramids, you've got Tiahuanaco. I mean, they're everywhere, all over the world, all over the plane. And they are astronomically correct. They're pointing to stars, they're pointing to constellations. Well, I'm just going off basic common sense. If they're pointing to something, there's a reason why they're pointing there, and it's for some sort of either a ceremony or a birthday or signs and symbols. They mean something.
Well, they're like to space, aren't they? I mean, if you take something like the Nazca lines, it's clear that when they were developed and built, that this is done from above.
Yeah.
And if you read another Maria Rice, she's no longer with us, but her information, she wrote and did so much study on Nazca lines. But one of the things she did when she came to Europe is she took measurements of this monuments around Europe and found, guess what? The unit of measurements was the same as she was discovering in South America.
Yeah.
And then just got to come back to Maria. I mean, if you look at the elongated skulls, where else have you found? You know about them in around Stonehenge, the UK. You hear about South America. Did you find any in Egypt, for example?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you do. I mean, you find them all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, in Malta, the Stonehenge female matched precisely to a female from Malta.
Wow.
Gosh.
So yeah, so you can start matching these kind of skulls up to the size, to the length, and when we look to the Malta temples, for example, we notice that they were all for goddess worship. So you imagine a priestesshood there, and a very kind of sensitive lunar. So when we look to the lunar alignments at Avebury, for example, it's much more difficult to get a lunar alignment than it is a solar one, mainly because the moon's quite complex and the sun is quite simple in its kind of cycle. So when I mentioned the cove stones earlier, I noticed in one of my books about Avebury, and I got the only photograph in the world, which is when in the moon's metonic cycle it aligns to the cove stones. That was a long-skulled astronomical alignment, and that only happens once every 18.61 years. Shows they are fantastic astronomers.
Wow.
Maria, wasn't you the one that was credited for discovering what's it called, the Devil's Chair, the Devil's Dock or something? This during the solstice, where the moon shines on. It's kind of like a little seat. I remember you saying one time. Can you tell us a bit about that chair? But apparently now it's not visible because of the trees or something. Is that correct?
That's right. You have a particular stone setting at Avebury. It's part of the greater circle that once contained 100 standing stones, the largest in the world, with a diameter over 1,000 feet. It's immense. And at the kind of south part of the monument, you have what's called the Devil's Chair and its partner, and they're the massive stones. They're the gateway from the West Kennet Stone Avenue into the heart and sanctity of the southern inner circle. So they're a very important key feature. And one of the very large standing stones there has a natural ledge, like a seat, where you can sit in it, and tourists to this day still do. They enjoy doing that. Now, it was discovered that if you take the Henge Bank back to its original point, which is 40 feet further back, according to the early archaeological reports by Alexander Keeler and others, then you have a much, much wider causeway, meaning an entrance. You don't have a bank in the way. And if it was taken back to its original design, then if you were sat in the devil's chair at the winter solstice sunrise, you would have a fantastic view and be in alignment to the midwinter sunrise. And you could have also seen the sun set just over to the right-hand side as well. So I think that was a very solar alignment incorporated, and that's why, in my opinion, you have the chair there, because it was for a priest or a priestess to sit in to attune to the sunrise on that date.
You're saying this is a solar alignment. I thought it was a lunar, but regardless, anyway.
No, that's a solar one, but
okay.
Yeah.
But you're saying also when the stones are bathed in moonlight, the energy that's given off those stones is like it's heightened because of the moonlight at these special times. You know, the solstices. Put my teeth back in. Solstices. Yeah.
Well, so with the moon cycle, you get like really big peak points, and that's the northernmost moonrise and moonset, and the southernmost moonrise and moonset in its midpoint position. Its midpoint position happens every 9 years, and the others are 18.61 years apart. At these particular moments, then you have a huge heightened amount of energy. I noticed this in 2006 when I was in the stone circle called Callanish on the Isle of Lewis, doing these type of measurements, really. And then that was at the southern most moonrise. And then that same year in 2006, I was at Avery's Cove Stones to see how the stones there were taking in the energy, so to speak, and it seemed to peak at those times. So I think that was a time they utilized that energy. And other times of the year as well, but especially at those times.
Yeah, I can't help thinking that as well. And it's strange that we call ley lines, you know, like lay. I'm into like, you know, words and the esoterics of words and what have you, you know, etymology. Lay down, lie down, ley lines. Do you understand what I mean? Power energy, these power lines. And the cows lay down always on ley lines, don't they?
Yeah, it was Alfred Watkins who made that coin lay, but intriguingly, at the same time in France, parallel and independently of Alfred Watkins' own terminology of the word lay, he came out with a lays.
So these ley lines, do you think that they could transport themselves through these ley lines? Because they were, you know, like maybe even if it's spiritually.
Well, certainly they were created for a reason, and maybe just like
they're created. They're not natural. Then these ley lines are not a natural thing. They've been created because they're all over the place, aren't they?
I think they've got to be natural.
Yeah. I think I think there's lots of different things going on. I think John Michel's right when he noticed that some are manipulated to face particular celestial events. I think some are quite natural and some are grid lines. So, and I think that again, you can multi-purpose this energy system for various different things at particular times of the year. So again, I think they're multifaceted.
I'm inclined to think that these lines, energy lines, magnetic fields, magnetic lines, whatever you want to call them, are natural. But at some point, they have been taken control of. There've been some controls being brought into it for use for this for
manipulated.
Yeah, they've been. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've got these fields like your monarch butterflies will fly, and your turtles will be guided by a magnetic field from across the Pacific Ocean or whatever. So there is a natural magnetism or whatever you want to call the lines. But I think these particular lines, they're so precise, they're in grids, and they're different. Like they're almost, as I say, some kind of, dare I say, communication network or something that's gone on. The reason I say communication network is because I think we've discovered ways to communicate now. We've also discovered electricity. We've discovered things that I believe we've always known about, but it just takes time for us to evolve to rediscover these particular inventions, these ideas. And at some point, we will discover what these ley lines are about. And maybe we're getting close to that because as we're moving forward with Wi-Fi, internet, different worldwide connections and worldwide developments, satellite technology, and so on. I think it's all been here before. And I think the level of knowledge on the planet about 30,000 years ago was way ahead of what we have on the planet now. But we've been running along this bathtub curve for a few centuries, but all of a sudden we're starting to pick up quite rapidly at the other end, and we're starting to move up this bathtub curve quite rapidly.
I agree.
It's excited to see, as Maria said earlier, we're in exciting times.
And I also feel, that when we look at ley systems that have the earth currents entwined in them, it seems like the earth currents are very living and sentient. And it's like I have pointed out to other geomancers, I think the ley is controlling long may, that's the male and the female currents entwine in that ley. That's the importance, because when you look to a ley line and it's living earth currents that entwine either side, they're only ever about 5 miles apart, the male and female currents that are like rivers meandering around that line. So I think, they are very, very important, even more so than the ley that keeps them together.
Maria, I was always interested in your discussions about positive energy. You get these points in churches and so on. Could you explain to everybody a bit more about that? These positive energy areas that you've discovered, and how they've kind of been hidden, especially in churches. They've been sort of you made to look in the wrong place for them.
Sorry, John.
Yeah.
I'd have to say it wouldn't be positive. It'd be like negative. I feel it must be negative ions, because that's where we get that's how we feel good. We feel good from the negative ions, and we feel bad from the positive ions. It's like the opposite, like thunderstorms and shit. That's the positive in the air. Whereas, walking on the grass, that's the negativity we're getting, And I think most of these ley lines were built, churches were built on these negative ion ley lines. Sorry, but it was to Maria.
Yeah, and also,
it's a good point.
Can I just add a bit? Like, if they were made, how did they make them?
Yeah, I want to make some more.
That's technology. There are certain leys that are so manipulated with these earth currents entwining them. That's a system. And when you look to European systems, you have masses of lines coming in. And that's what the French discovered in the 1930s. So, it is a long-lost technology.
Maria, you mentioned these churches around about here that you can go into and you find this amazing positive energy. I know you use the word positive, Ashel, as far as because you tend to use the word positive if you feel good and negative if you don't feel good. I take your point about the negative positive ions, but yeah, sorry, Maria.
Negative ions making us feel positive. Haha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, it was for you to carry on, Maria.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, yes, I'm not, obviously, I've been banned by the vicar for going in any churches now. So,
you fell into my trap, Maria.
Into them now, but they were, again, the pagans, here for the pagans, they were focusing on the circular. The Knights Templar took over that to a certain degree, and some of their early churches were circular. And then the kind of secret societies, the kind of Masonic Brotherhood, they changed them, and a lay will just connect them. That's what that does. But they were far more savvy than that. And what they looked for was a cross in the land, not necessarily of lays. Yeah, but if you imagine that you take the church away and then you're just looking at the land for what the land is, and you have a kind of, it could be an underground stream coming in, it could be a ley, it could be the Hartman grid, or it could be another grid system, and that's coming down. So it could be wavy line, it could be straight, and then you've got another one crossing, and that's sanctified the land. I call that the Geo cross. It sanctified the land. It made them a Christian symbol, not the circle, but the cross in the land. That was their key design factor. And even if you look to the late and great Hamish Miller's work in The Sun and the Serpent, which he penned with Paul Broadhurst, he too points that out at church after church, where the Mary and Michael earth currents that meander around the St. Michael Lay form that cross in the land. It doesn't have to be an earth current either. Like I said, it could be an underground water, but that was their key design canon.
Yeah. I remember we discussed this before, that, or I remember you discussing this before, that somewhere like Merlin's Mound, or Marlborough Mound as it's known in Marlborough, was a very positive energy site. And of course, guess what? Marlborough College is built on it. Obviously, was that built there because of this so-called positive energy that would be beneficial to the students that were attending the college?
Same as Eton. Eton has a mound. Look to Oxford University. That has a mound close by. Numerous private schools are associated with mounds.
Yeah.
I think actually, if we were to look into it, we would find that most of these schools, colleges, universities, and cathedrals are only built on ley lines, special, centres.
Especially the geodetic system of earth energies, because when you look to our top university, Oxford University, it used to be a Druid core, C-O-R, meaning college. So prior to Oxford University, you had a Druid core built there.
I'm a bit amazed, really, that the elongated skulls is the long barrow, and the other skulls are the circles, and that they're actually different times. They don't talk about that, do they? No one. You're the only one really talking about that. All these different time scales.
Yeah, well, the archaeologists talk about timescales, to be fair, but most tour guides and most people that bring people to this landscape don't necessarily understand that it's different time zones. So they go up to West Kennet Longbow, and then they go to Avebury Stone Circles and think it's all of the same era. That's a problem. And the layering systems that you can go down are quite easily defined by different periods in time. So yes, it's an amazing build. The ancient landscape is a living landscape that is constantly changing, and we're even doing that now to the landscape.
I just find it's really crazy that here we are in 2018, and we're only just discovering the history now properly, and that's only because of people like you.
Well, I mean, it is quite shocking, really, but it is what it is. And like I say, I'm really excited that, we're on the edge of a huge understanding about our ancient past. I think everybody's contributing their own research to that, like the guests here today.
Maria, can I ask you? I know that you're a bit of an archaeologist and all that lot, and you have this, water dowsing in your background and stuff. But I get from you that you're actually one of the experts when it comes to, Stonehenge and these barrows that we have, these megalithic structures in Britain. Are you?
Well, what I have done is that I have painstakingly read every single archaeological report about every single barrow around Stonehenge. I've read over 800 archaeological reports. Remind me to get a personal life.
Well, there you go. Come join us for a cup of tea one time.
So it does take a lot of research, and I don't know anybody that I'm dedicated to the people of the past.
Sure.
When I met that elongated skull in the museum, I just said, "Tell me your story, and I'll tell other people."
Yeah, beautiful. But I do feel that you are, John. You know Maria. You've known her for a long time, but from what I gather, anyway, you are one of the experts to do with these megalithic structures in Britain, these long barrows, Stonehenge, the history of well, the history of the things that we don't know about, you know, and I truly appreciate you coming on today, honestly. I mean, especially with John as well, because John, I love hearing from you too, brother. You know, I mean, you're awesome. You are awesome. Yeah.
No, but just to go back to Maria is unique. She's unique that she's living this, you know, she's involved, she runs courses at, you know, Avebury, she's around the world, and you just back from Egypt. If you're interested, she's doing a talk at Glastonbury Symposium, I think it was the 29th of July. I would highly recommend anybody listening to get themselves along to that, because her knowledge, as you probably already can gather, is second to none. And I've listened to so-called English heritage experts and so on, and they just can't hold a candle anywhere near the knowledge that Maria has. So long may she continue. And I would
blessed.
I'd like her to get a life sometime, but I'm sure she does.
She has a life, and this is her life. Obviously, she loves enjoying doing what she's doing. So, Maria, you carry on doing what you're doing, love. You know, I mean, it's for the better of mankind. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you very much for that as well.
What's that?
We want to know more about our history. I mean, you know that I don't live very far from Coombe Hill. I mean, that's another site there. There's an ancient site up there. You know, supposedly the pagans used to walk along the Ridgeway Walk to go to Oxford because there were supposed to be big trees down there. There aren't any trees there like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that we just don't know properly.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we like to know the truth.
Yes.
I think it's.
I missed that. Sorry.
I was just saying, I live not that far from Coombe Hill.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't live in the UK, they won't know where that is, but Coombe Hill is the biggest chalk hill in England. On there's an ancient site, and the pagans used to walk along the Ridgeway Walk up to Oxford because the trees were so big and it was the only way they could see. So
yes,
there's history there.
Quite enigmatic.
Yeah. I mean, you think you know everything, and actually you find out you know nothing.
Mm. Yes, the more you learn, the less you know. Yes, yeah. Can I say one thing? Can I say one thing about? It's intriguing what Maria said about the Druids. You know how they almost, you know, very important as part of the establishment, if you like, of Oxford University, and how today they're kind of almost ridiculed or obsolete and so on. But I personally believe that the Druids were probably the group of people that brought ancient knowledge with them right through the centuries, protected it and looked after it. And because somebody did, there's knowledge that's come through, and I think a lot of it's still hidden, that we don't know about. It's hidden, except for a handful of people know about this. They know what happened in our prehistory, and they potentially know what's going to happen in the future. It's a bit like the magic trick. If you know how the magic trick works, you're no longer bamboozled, and you can almost say, "Oh, is that it?" But the rest of us, we're slowly beginning to find out how the magic trick works, and how humanity did begin. And I'll be intrigued to find out, Maria, when you get the opportunity to explain, get a chance to explain your findings regarding this. I'm intrigued by this new link, human link, because that's definitely up my street. I'm very interested to find out a bit more about that when you are at liberty to spill the beans.
That's right. When it comes to my next book on Stonehenge, it will have all of these new discoveries in, and I'll be looking at different kind of pockets of people and monuments across Europe to build a much bigger picture of, the landscape of Stonehenge seen through the eyes of Europe as well, because I think it goes beyond one side. But it's been really wonderful talking to you all today and to be a part of this. But I have to go soon because I allocated like 2 to 3. So if that's okay, it's been great to be part of this show, and I've thoroughly enjoyed everybody's company.
Thanks, Maria.
It's been really amazing having you on. There was a question that someone just asked in the chat room. One man's and his detector asked, "What's your take on the heel foot stone at Stonehenge?"
The heel stone at Stonehenge, oh gosh, that I could go on for ages just about that. But just in a nutshell, for example, is we've all been thinking, quite rightly so to some degree, that the heel stone aligns to the sunrise at midsummer, the summer solstice. But if we go back to the long-skulled people and phase 1 of Stonehenge, in which the Neolithic people erected the heel stone, for example, that's phase 1 of Stonehenge, and we look to lunar alignments, then you'll find that majestically every 9 years the full moon will rise above the heel stone perfectly, much more perfectly and accurate than the sunrise event. So it's a lunar marker stone, and also what the long-skulled people incorporated into that was by using phase 1 as an eclipse predictor, as Sir Fred Hoyle and Gerald Hawkins have pointed out. Then when the full moon rises close to the winter solstice at Stonehenge, it will rise blood red in eclipse perfectly above the heel stone.
Oh.
Wow.
There's far more to the sun at Stonehenge. You see, the lunar alignments, and as we shall soon see, the star alignments create a beautiful location, first discovered by and initiated by the long-skulled people.
Can I just ask you something? I know that you want to go in a moment, but is it that many people are thinking like you, or is it that you have to sort of fight the establishment for everything?
Well, I think, I've changed the way people think about Neolithic Britain through the long-skulled discovery. So I really feel I'm contributing logical studies are being done that will reveal more and more information. So the research goes on.
I know that we've had some technical problems today and that you've come through my phone, but I think everybody's heard you very clearly. Would you come back and have this hangout with you actually on the panel when you've got your new internet sort of sorted out?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to be on the show, on the internet, and thank you for bearing with the technical issues and calling me on the telephone is appreciated. And
that's because of John. So thank John.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, John.
My pleasure. And before you go, I look forward to seeing you at Glastonbury, if not before.
Yes, that'd be lovely, John. I will see you, at the Glastonbury Symposium. I'm leading their tour as well to the Rollright Stone Circle on the Thursday, as well as doing a talk there on the elongated people and the Rollright Stone Circle on the over the weekend conference. It will be great. I'll see you there.
And one more thing as well is it's really great that you're friends with Brian Forrester as well. He said that he was coming over to the UK when he came on our panel a few weeks ago.
Oh, is Maria gone now?
No, she's still
no.
there.
I'm just about to go.
He said that
Food's still in the oven.
He's going to Silbury Hill as well. Is that true?
He's going to where?
Silbury Hill as well. He wants to go to Silbury Hill.
Oh, I think we're doing the Stonehenge and possibly the Avebury environs with I will be doing that with Brian. Yeah.
Because I said I'd love to come along that day and meet you, John, and Brian. I'd love that.
Is that September?
Yes, that would be nice.
That's in September.
It could be good.
And very much appreciate it, and really look forward to you coming back, Maria.
Okay, and if you ever want any radio work on astrology, I could do something on that as well, and talk about one of the books I've just recently had published by Ozark Mountain Publishing as well.
Well, actually, there was a real question I wanted to. Well, I'd love to hear that as well. Yes, please, all of that. First, very quickly, then, just very quick, because I know you want to go, but there's a lot of people when they put stuff out about Avebury and all that, they call it resonating and doing all this. Do you believe all that it was all resonating with that mound in Marlborough and so on? Do you reckon they were all resonating together and doing things? And Or
Well,
the
again,
long...
it's different time zones. So, I mean, that could have been the end result, but maybe it was kind of resonating to one particular one, and then as other monuments were added, it was quite different to that. So, I think that's a very sweeping statement for a whole landscape. When they're like I described, there's 1,000 years between one phase and another. So, I mean, it would have to be added to continually, which is probably more than likely. But what we could do for one radio show is I could give me your birth chart and we could look at your past lives or something. But I've got to go now. But it's been a real pleasure to be a part of this.
Oh no, thank you very much. Thank you very much even for persevering and coming on the phone, because it was a bit annoying, wasn't it? We actually had Maria on the panel, but she just was lagging and then had a problem, and then her computer didn't come back on. But I'm very pleased that obviously we've spoken to you and you've come on. It's been amazing.
All right then, thank you very much.
We'll speak to you soon, Maria.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Maria. Oh, excellent.
There we go. Back again. Sorry. Issues.
I have to turn you down a bit, Astrid, for a moment.
Do you?
Can you mute yourself, Astrid, for a minute?
I can do that, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was amazing. I could have sat listening to her for quite a lot longer.
Yeah. This is years and years of many years of research, discovery, listening, travel, and it was nice for her to appear and give you a little flavour of how much knowledge she has.
But it's just nice to hear,
in terms of this alternative knowledge, as Ashley was saying. This is somebody who's coming along with just looking at things differently, as we all in this kind of group like to do. So yeah.
How does all her stuff fit in with you, John, with the pyramid then? That must be another time then.
Well, she's done about 2,000 years, for example, to build, say, Stonehenge, or 1,000 years to build Stonehenge and so on. And she's right. I mean, take the Wessex complex, Stonehenge, Avebury, and that would have taken quite a long time to build. And as I suggest, if the alien or ET arrived on our planet 13,000 years ago, at least it'd take them 2,000 years plus to produce this worldwide civilization, and building different parts of it at different times. So just obviously couldn't build it all at once. It's, as we are today, we couldn't build a whole city in a day, in a decade, or on 20, 30 years.
Well, you'd love to have seen it in its heyday then, because obviously it looks a bit sort of, out on its own, it's grass, it's not in its magnificence, this whole thing. But
no, most of it's buried underneath this huge meteorite strike would have washed silt and soil and all this over most of the ancient civilization. So Atlantis, we're still looking for that, and we're still looking for umpteen other places that we kind of realized would have existed just by tracking different areas. And sadly, we're finding that places like Iraq and Iran have been bombed badly over the last 10 years or so, 20 years, and they were like there's amazing stuff there that's been damaged and destroyed, and we wonder why. But I still feel confident, as along with Maria, that there are other things still to be discovered. So the elites of the establishment, they can't stop things being discovered. They can't stop what's in your mind, your knowledge, what's in your head. They can't control that. They're trying to control it. They try to manipulate you, but there's people like us that will buck the trend. We just won't allow ourselves to be. You must do this. You must do that. You must take tablets. You must whatever. You must eat all this food, junk food, and whatever. I'm being silly there with these sort of examples, but I just think that there's a growing band of people now who just got fed up with this constant manipulation, and I've come up with this concept of realizationism, or we begin to realize just that this is happening to us, and beginning to explore all the time. And you look at our creativity has expanded hugely in the last 20 years because of the computer and the internet, and lots of us are writing books, lots of us are producing wonderful paintings, wonderful music. It's just not left to the few who can afford to do it, as in the past with archaeologists. It's really a handful of very rich aristocrats that were allowed or could go out and look at these ancient tombs. And what did they do? They collected the stuff and they took it home with them, and they put them in their homes and in different places, and just sadly, just completely. So that went through that period. I like to call it a period where aristocrats destroyed the evidence, but there's still more evidence to be found, and that's what's exciting.
That's it. But that's it, John. Like you said, we're at an age now where we can glean all this information. We've got the internet. You're in, where are you? Scotland, England, whatever. I'm in Denmark. You know, Karen's in England.
Well, a little way, but down this end.
But that's a good thing. Now we can have instant information. Boom, within a second. You know, something I found out at 1 minute past or 1 minute past 5. You can have that information at 1 minute past 5 and 20 seconds later, John. You know, that's how good this internet is. Years ago, it would take years before we found information. Sometimes it could. I mean, give how many years? How many years do you want it before you can find it? Sometimes it could take 1,000 years before you found that piece of information. And now I'm just talking like randomly, right? But let's imagine you're researching something. You're looking for a specific thing. It could take you your whole life before you found it, man. Whereas now we've got the internet. Hey, you can be limiting your research into. It doesn't take more than an hour to find, whatever it is you want to find. Maximum an hour. You can find anything you want to find within an hour, basically, And if obviously you want to do deeper research, well, you can keep going.
Right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
What does it mean to you, John, when you listen to her talk about the fact that there is these elongated head people and they were very tall, 5 foot, 5 foot 5? What does that mean? Like, how could they have built these things? I mean, how do they build those ley lines? Gee, they're not natural. They're man-made. There's thousands and thousands of them.
Yeah. Well, it was.
Does that mean then that basically we're living on the top of Nazca lines? It's just that we can't see them the same because there's grass and trees. Like the Nazca lines out there are in a kind of deserts, and people then can see them from the air. You can't see the rest of the world like that because there's trees and.
Karen, you also have to realise that these ley lines are natural. They're naturally formed.
That's not what she was saying. She was saying they're man-made. They were made.
How can they be made? It's a law of nature. It's a natural power line within the core of Earth.
That's what she said. She said they were made.
Yeah, well, how can they make them?
Well, this is the point. This is the point.
They can maybe be steered. They can maybe be steered in some way by use of metals, copper or whatever, gold or some minerals and that kind of thing. But I don't think that we can control them in that sense. We can build on them, yeah. We can find them, yeah. But
you didn't
control of them, I don't know.
All of them have been made.
Yeah, I think that.
No, go on, John. What were you going to say?
I think the interesting thing here is the time scale, and Maria, she's similar to others in that she's still involved in a time scale, if you like. Okay, it's pushing back now from 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, and so the elongated skulls, Karen, that she talks about, these are people that are survivors, if you like, that have been around in that sort of time scale from like the last 4, 5, 6, 12,000 years. But all this stuff that went on, this knowledge and intelligence, this production or manipulation of ley lines or the production of pyramids, this huge thing, that all happened before this time. So that what you're seeing with these elongated people who are maybe 5 foot tall or whatever, they've evolved after the event, after the destruction of that civilization. So the civilization was destroyed about 10,500 years ago. So if you look at Egypt, the Egyptian civilization is a civilization in decline. And you can see people coming to Egypt to collect information and almost maybe steal stuff they can find or whatever, and take it off to Greece or take it off to whatever, ideas and so on that were around. And so you got people like the Buddha or Socrates or people like that. They were a little bit after that. But they had access to information which has since disappeared. And it's intriguing to find that these people, they always preached loving kindness, and I think that was a society before it was destroyed, this ancient civilization before 10,500 years ago that was probably built on a kind of structure of loving kindness, but it's also built on a structure where they developed the human sort of what you call a Homo sapien into an intelligent human being, and they probably graded them. So you'd have to have some kind of structure going on where you got some people who carried stuff, some people who were a bit more intelligent, who were developed, and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to kind of split what went before the great destruction of the planet 10,500 years ago to what's happened after. So yes, there were guys with elongated heads around. There's all sorts of strange things that were still around after the flood that slowly disappeared. We call them freaks, and we even saw freaks back in Victorian times that obviously, as time goes by, they can't survive. And so you don't see many unusual sort of humans around today, but there were even back just a few hundred years ago. But this is all a throwback to a destruction of the planet about 10,500 years ago. But prior to that was the golden age of this amazing civilization. It was developing and growing and producing this wonderful network. And coming back to what Ashra was saying, I think that the ley lines were somehow produced by, we call them man-made, whatever you want to call them, that civilization before the ancient ETs, I call it lead civilization. These were a complex system using energy, using all sorts of technologies that have since been lost, but we're slowly discovering.
So do you think that the destruction was on purpose then, to try and destroy all this?
No, I think that they maybe even saw it coming, but they couldn't do anything about it. It's like today, we could be a meteorite coming towards us. We know it's going to hit us in 100 years' time, but we can't do anything about it. So we have to try and prepare for it. And I think they did. And I mentioned this to you in the last time we had a talk. I think they tried to collect as much information as they could. And the ark wasn't a boat, it was a pyramid, and I think, or some kind of structure. They tried to save the information. And they tried their best to try and protect as much of the civilization as they could. But the impact of this meteorite strike was such that it fragmented the civilization and it didn't recover.
Well, those electrical arkings, which did happen to the place we live on, they definitely would have been immense. It would have basically evaporated you. You know, it would have caused massive destruction.
Well, I saw that tsunami on Boxing Day a few years ago in the Indian Ocean, and you could see the huge destruction that did. And that was just a fraction of just a big earthquake that occurred. And
yeah, I have to say, I was watching some of those, and they're just absolutely incredible. We've got no idea what it must be like being in the middle of one of those. Though that water just doesn't stop coming, and it just rips everything to pieces.
Nothing else would happen. That's why you've got the Sphinx with the head stuck above the ground. I think that the pyramids were there. There's things that are amazingly left high and dry, but most of it is there's a lot of stuff underground, probably not that far underneath, especially around.
Yeah, because you know the Glastonbury tour.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if any of it's true because it's just what we're told, but that was a kind of island, and basically used to sail to that little church that's on the top, whereas now there's no water and you walk up it. Yeah. What do you reckon of that? Do you reckon it was surrounded by water?
I think so. I think it probably was, because I think, as we said before, water is important in terms of from generating energy, because of the fact that you can convert water with not a lot of effort into positive and negative ion. You can create an ionic current flow. But they seem to know these things. They seem to understand physics. They seem to understand astronomy, astrology, and astronomy, and I'm convinced that, again, pure speculation, of course, that we've inherited their knowledge. We've inherited their knowledge in our subconscious memory, and each generation able to somehow get into this area of our unconscious memory, which in a computer I call it your operating system. Nobody can get into it other than Microsoft.
Yeah, can I say something, John?
Yes.
I can't help but think all my research.
Astral?
Yeah.
Oh, Astral, you've just blanked out a bit.
Back in a minute.
Astral? We've just lost connection with you. He's disappeared for a moment now, and he's obviously got a bit of a bad connection there. Just so that if people don't understand or don't know who John is on the panel, John is somebody who's been inside Silbury Hill for people who are in England. And you've written books, haven't you, John? And you've also done presentations about Silbury Hill.
Yes, one of the presentations I did on Silbury Hill was basically to explain how it was actually built as a pyramid, and how, along with other pyramids on the planet, it was actually basically a generator of energy. And
so do you believe that with these elongated skull people, that's what I was going to say. You know, Brian Forrester said that they were a subspecies, human species, but maybe we're the subhuman species. Maybe it's us.
That's a good point, because you'd think if they've got elongated skull, it seems to suggest they've got a bigger brain. So, and I think Maria alluded to that. So it could well be that they were the leaders, if you like. They were the top guys that ran the rest of us. But that, again, that's just, who knows. That's speculation. And the fact that there were not many of them around compared to your normal Homo sapien type that developed into the human.
Is that because they're buried under the ground? You know, like they're there, but they're just not visible because they're buried.
Well, I just think if, say, today there was say 100 normal round-headed people and only one elongated, and then so a disaster happened, then it would be probably quite difficult to find that one. But it would be very easy to find the round-headed in amongst the other 99. And I think it's a little bit like that. I think there's probably, if there are fewer elongated skull people around, then obviously the chances of finding them are a little bit harder. But that, again, this is just, I mean, Brian Forster in Peru and so on, I'm not sure how many elongated skulls he's found. And I know there are quite a few found in Egypt at a particular point in time. So it's hard to know if they were a separate species on their own or whether they were a kind of leadership group that, because of the bigger skull, maybe had a bigger brain. But again, it's just, again, difficult to it's open to speculation. But the fact is that these people with elongated skulls did exist, and that's only come to our attention in the last few years.
So are you in the same place as her, excited about how everything's changing now?
Yes, I'm very excited about it, because I unless they try to close down the internet, as Ursula was saying, how important it is, Google and so on. You've already seen trying to make moves on Facebook, trying to get that sort of. It's always the thing. What they do is they bring in Operation Discredit. So they'll try and discredit you or somebody or whatever to make it look, oh, it's really bad. And then everybody will fall, again, back to this mind, how we're manipulated. We'll all think, oh yeah, Facebook, yeah, it's a load of crap. Yeah, we're not going to use it. And as long as we don't get suckered into that with the internet, but then the other ways that they could manipulate internet, which just simply by closing down they've got the power to close down certain areas and do certain things if they so needed. And I'm always intrigued to find out what happens there. But I think we've come to a point, as long as we can communicate as groups, as we've done today, as long as we can talk to each other, either through this medium or just through the internet, through emailing or whatever, then as long as we can do that, I think we'll progress really, really quickly. Yeah. So
has she helped you with your research then, just asking, with Silbury Hill? No,
not really. We always come together on presentations or different discussions, but I think the traction of it is because we both come with different. We kind of back each other up. I would never criticize what she does, and nor would I, because I think what she does is brilliant, and her ideas. I wouldn't criticize her ideas. Some of them I might disagree with slightly, or I might think, oh, I'm not sure about that, but I would never criticize them, because I don't know. And as you probably gather from the conversation, she's well read, well researched, and she put a lot of thought into things. So I wouldn't poo-poo anything she says, because she's put a lot of ideas and thought into it. There's things I would probably disagree with, and I think she hesitated a couple of things I said, and she maybe hesitated on some of the things that I talk about. But there's still this mutual respect for each other, and that's the key thing with all of this. And the group that we have today is just respecting our comments and ideas. So somebody might say something which you think is, oh, that doesn't sound very good, but you have to think, oh, this is a thinking person. This is somebody who's got their ideas. You can't just dismiss it. There's probably something in it, and I think there's, whatever somebody says, there's always something it's got to be listened to and thought through and see if something comes of it. So to answer your question, yeah, we both I mean, she's more into energies and more into she's in just quite a different area to where I belong. I'm more into the evolution of humanity, and that kind of going back a lot further than maybe she would go back. She's beginning to come back now to, as is archaeologists now, where it was 4,000 years for the ages of these things. I think it won't be long before. I think she alluded to that. I think she started to say that, yeah, there are going to be some new things announced fairly soon. She's going to push back the dates and push back.
Yeah, I'd like to have known that, but obviously it's in her book, so she doesn't want to release
push back the ideas. But it's just, I mean, I've been saying this for 20 years in my book, that we've been, all these things are much older, and just a common sense. If you go look at the Great Pyramid, you look at Stonehenge, you look at all these things, you can see they're much older than 4,000 years old, because the way they've, I don't know, I know it's instinct and gut feel, and of course you can't build on that, but I do think that we could probably start producing computer programs in the future where you can actually show a limestone pyramid how quickly it does take to weather down to something like Silbury Hill, or in a different climate in Egypt. Obviously, it'd take a lot longer for these structures to become, although they can't become hills because it's too arid. They can't produce grass. Well, having said that, I did see one kind of pyramid shape beginning to look like Silbury Hill in Egypt. Anyway, so I think that's the exciting thing for me, is that things that I've talked about for 20 years is beginning to come true, and that people are beginning to think, oh yeah, it's not, things are a lot older, they are more than 10,000 years. Then I think the next step will be, I may not be here to say it, oh yeah, it is much older, it's probably going back 13,000 years. And I may be wrong with that, maybe it's even older than that, maybe this ancient civilization was there a bit earlier, but I just think it would take them about 2,000 years to build a civilization on Earth from scratch. And sadly, it was destroyed by just a freak. It's just one of these things, and I think there's just a meteorite striking back at the time of the dinosaurs that destroyed the dinosaurs. And so it wasn't as bad as that, but it was enough to...
You have said this one before. I know that, you understand about this flat Earth thing, but in flat Earth, we don't believe in the dinosaurs anymore, or space the same. That doesn't mean that when you say alien, they haven't come from further afield.
No, I mean... There's a feeling now, there's a view now, it could have even come from Mars. I mean, before that planet destroyed itself, and I think they're beginning to wonder, and this is going to another worrying cover-up thing.
You're saying that, but we've never been to space, John. So,
well, this is a discussion point, but I think if rover and these cameras, these things that I believe are on Mars, roaming around on Mars, if they pick up something that looks like it's not natural, which I think they'll find. This is one of the other exciting things for me, is I think they could well find something on Mars that, if you like, shouldn't be there. Mars
isn't a planet, though.
What will you think about that then?
Mars isn't a planet. It's just an orb in the sky. It's not very big either. They've lied about all that as well. Mm-hmm. They had to create space to create the globe. Mm-hmm. And we're in an enclosed system, which is why basically I'm saying these alien-y things, they may have come from further afield.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you think that Earth is maybe unique, do you, or as a?
Well, I don't even know what it is, because in a sense, the way that they've set it up now, it's like we're living in an open-air prison. I mean, it's such a beautiful place, but it's like hell, because there's just, everything is a lie. Everything is our history, what we live on, how far away things are, what they are, the whole thing. It's just... And television, in one sense, like you say, without the computer, we can't talk to each other. But they've used it to continually lie to us. These people like NASA, they need to go to prison.
Mm-hmm. Well, the worrying thing is we talk about, well, we can't use hairsprays, or we can't, obviously, I'm not going to disagree I'm going to get subject about coal fires and things like that. But if the fact that we're draining the planet of all the oil that's in I don't know what that's going to create damage underneath. If we take the oil out, is that going to move the shell of the planet in some way, which is not going to be good as far as earthquakes and stuff, because we're obviously taking a lot of...
We're not moving, we're fixed, so there won't be any problems for that, because we're not moving.
Okay, and then yeah, but then so we right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like some of these things are just.
Well, I'm just saying. Okay, so I'm just saying that these resources are being used up rapidly, and there's no once they're used up, that's it. And then another comment is, and what's your comment on the fact that there's 100,000 flights per day?
I mean, obviously, pilots come onto our channel and they say that if we were moving, they wouldn't be able to land the plane. And again, no one actually talks about the fact if we were on this spinning ball, the different speed that we're going to America. You know, like we're at the equator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like the pilot goes, "Hang on a minute, we're just picking up 500 miles an hour. Here we go." It'd be the worst roller coaster ride of your life.
So,
and then a gyroscope proves that they set it to a flat plane, and that's what they fly over. The gyroscope is not fixed. It doesn't move up and all these kind of things. It's not bending or moving or anything. And so that's how pilots realize that we're, you know, for them, that we're not moving.
Right.
And we're not a spinning ball.
Right.
But I know that's a slightly different discussion. And, you know, in a sense, we've already said that we are amazed that you're here because you're a slightly elderly gentleman. And, you know, your forte isn't space and all that. Yours is Silbury Hill and history and all that kind of stuff.
Well, my reason, doctor, is just basically just to get people to think. Just
yeah, you know, on the space thing.
I'm trying to say, don't just sit down and be fed, accept what you've been fed or what you've been told. It's just basically, okay, I've been told this, and just question it. If it's something you feel you want to question, if some things you might think, oh no, okay, I couldn't care less. That does not going to affect me, or I'm not bothered. So
I can send you the link to this one. It was just looking at NASA footage. They were supposed to be outside with Boeing on the space station. And what it was is they were both outside, except one of them was paused, which means it wasn't live. Mm-hmm. It was CGI, and it didn't happen. It was fake. Right. Yeah, this astronaut is paused. He's standing there paused, and the other one's moving around. Nothing on him is moving. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've got a video about that. Mm-hmm. And the whole point was, it's all, to me, the reason, you know, to lie to the people that badly and pretend that there's space and pretend that there's planets and pretend we've been up there, to pretend we're a tiny speck of dirt and everything else is really big. It's all about still controlling us. The whole thing is to control us. I mean, we're 2018 and people like you and Maria are finding and discovering the real history. We're 2018. We're not advanced. Mm-hmm. We're not advanced at all. They were advanced. We're not.
I think the person you need to really have on your program is Mary Bennett. She's the author of the book Dark Moon, and she lives in Avebury, Truslow.
Avebury,
Truslow. Right. And she doesn't believe that. I mean, she wrote a book. If you look up her name, Mary Bennett, Dark Moon. She's like you. She doesn't believe that we landed on the moon and it was all staged. But she's written lots of books now, but she lives in near Avebury, Truslow. And,
okay, well, I'll look her up. Do you know her as well, then?
She thinks absolutely along. Sorry, she thinks absolutely along the same lines as you do.
Do you know her as well?
Yeah. Yeah. If I give you a number, you could.
I think that's the whole thing about, like, I know we don't really want to talk about this because we were talking about other things, but this is the whole thing about flat Earth. It's not just about one part of it, what we're living on. It's just that it covers everything. I mean, you almost have to turn into a scientist. That's why we don't hardly sleep, because people are on there and they're researching things and looking at this. There's just so much. It's so vast. I mean, like, you've kept to your subjects more about what interests you, and that's what you've carried on about. And you know that nearly everything's a lie, and you know they're trying to control us, don't you? You know all that part of it. But this, I think, it covers 9/11. It covers everything.
Yeah. Well, if you look up Mary, but I can't give it obviously online because her number. But I'll email you her number, telephone number, and she may be keen to come on. I know she's been writing a book for about 10 years.
Well, yes, we'd like to talk to her then, because again,
she's an amazing,
big subject.
Hmm?
And the moon is a very big subject in flat Earth.
Well, she's the only problem is we argue all the time, so you don't want to have both of us on the same program.
Oh, Oh, I know, but that's it. None of us know anything for sure, but the majority of people here listening in today believe we're not moving and we're on some stationary place. Because your senses tell you that. I mean, no one can record curvature. So again, these things are just... But anyway, let's move on from that one, because as I said, we already know that, you know, we're amazed that you have the information that you do, and we appreciate the fact that in many senses you've woken up and you understand that this is all a game, isn't it, that we're in a mind controlling game. Yeah, exactly. And you're right, you just need to, as I say, just have your groups, your ideas, your discussions, get more people involved and see what they have to say, and they engage with your audience. And just as a thought, as we're talking about, you know, what you're just talking about just now, and I just thought, yeah, she would be. I will look her up. So thank you so much for that, John.
Look her up on obviously Google, and I think her books are done. Well, I think she's got a new book coming out. But last time I spoke to her, well, I was in her house. She said, "Oh, this." I said, "Well, when's this book? You've been talking about this book for about 5 years. It's in the publisher, it's going to be produced." But that was about a year ago, and I still haven't seen it. So you might ask her about her new book.
All right, then I will. Thank you so much for that, my darling. Also, just to ask, is anything happening with Silbury Hill? Any more talks that you're doing?
No, I don't think so. I'm just trying to think at the moment. I'm just racking my brain. No, I'm planning to. My thing is, as I say, going to Glastonbury Symposium, because there a lot of people, you know, like yourself, your family, we're all interested in meeting up. So I meet up with similar people. Sometimes some people I meet up with every year. Often a lot of new people I meet, and I think it's a great place to gather. And there's some wonderful talks. There's some fantastic talks. So I highly recommend the Glastonbury Symposium. I think it's about the 27th to the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the end of July.
Well, I'm really looking forward to September then, with Brian Forrester coming, and the fact that I can meet you. Yeah. Well, that'll be brilliant. And as you say, we might get a little group together, because there's a few other names of people that would be, I'm sure, interested to chat to your crew. Yeah, well, I will get in touch. Is she on actually YouTube then, this Mary Bennett? YouTube, probably. I just think you go into Google and you probably find her on YouTube.
Karen, I've just sent you the link on Messenger.
Oh, is that what you just sent me? I was a bit frightened to go there. I guess it was something horrible, Patricia. Oh, thank you so much, Patricia.
That's all right. Can I just say, while I've got my mic on, John, you know what you were saying earlier about differences, and we've all got different ideas and things, and you're just pieces of the puzzle, and we appreciate your time to be on here. Same with Maria. It's absolutely fascinating, you know. We don't always agree on everything, but it doesn't really matter. No. You're getting the truth out there, and that's the main thing. And we're coming together. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure, Patricia. Pleased to be on, and thanks.
I mean, you've probably been with us. What was it? You've been with us for 2.5 hours.
Oh, bloody hell! I was going to say, yeah.
Do you think that you've had enough as well? Have you had enough of us, John? Have you had enough of us?
No, I'm fine. I was going to say, I think Maria, she was on a bit longer than we thought.
Yeah, she didn't really like the idea of the telephone much, but I think she did really well, because I think she was a bit annoyed because she would want to show pictures and stuff like that. But she was getting a new internet connection, and she thinks that they have disconnected her earlier, and she didn't have her new broadband thing, or whatever she was going to use. She didn't have it. It hadn't come, because they said they were disconnecting her on Friday. Yeah. But she thinks they've disconnected her as we were speaking, basically.
Yeah, I did that similar thing. There was a program, Lifting the Veil. I think you maybe heard of it a few years back, and I think I had a very poor broadband connection, and I managed to get something going, but it was quite. I can understand her frustration. Yeah.
It is a little bit frustrating, isn't it? You know, if you want to, you know, if you've got things to talk about and then you've got computer issues. I have enough of my own. That's why I don't put my camera on, because my broadband's so slow. Even though I've turned the broadband on the screen down, I lag, and so my voice never matches my face. And I find that frustrating, you know, especially as I'm like the host. So that's why I don't have my camera on most of the time. But I mean, it would be a very exciting day. I mean, I definitely have to have my camera on if I get to meet you, her, and Brian Forrester. That would be amazing.
There may well be a few others around at the time, but certainly I think Patricia sent you the link for Bennett. So if you need to get her number, I can. But just mention your name, but then she'll know that you can't possibly put the both of us on because we're completely at loggerheads.
Oh dear, that doesn't sound like you. You sound such a lovely man. You doesn't sound like you.
No, she'll
You're
probably deny that. She'll probably say that she loves me a lot, but don't believe her.
Oh, what were you going to say, Patricia?
Yeah, it's just a link to a video that someone else has done. I can't find her on an actual YouTube account, but it'll give you an idea, and I dare say you can Google some more information.
Yeah, because she's a bit of a recluse. She lives on her own in a cottage in, as I say, and but she's very reclusive, so she's a bit of a recluse. So she maybe doesn't show herself out too much, but she's absolutely. You think Maria knows her subject back to front? Well, this and her subject, her area, she's absolutely brilliant. And she's
another person that lives. You said in Avebury.
Avebury Treslow.
What's that place? Is that close to Avebury then, or
it's just up the road? As you come out of Avebury towards Devizes, it's a little village there.
So just asking, with this whole thing with the Long Barrows and you know, the Silbury Hill and that, there's no houses or those kind of things there, is there? You know, like the towns aren't close. The towns are miles away.
Yeah, that's interesting. But having said that, there was quite a big Roman town or garrison next to Silbury Hill, up on the hill, and I always thought that they must have had some drawings or pictures of Silbury Hill, because it must have looked quite spectacular then back in Roman times. But I haven't been able to track anything down, and I'm sure if there was anything, it would have been long since destroyed. But I just feel that the Romans were there for quite a number of years. Obviously, well, in fact, if you notice the Roman road, there's actually kink in it around Silbury Hill. Most of its Roman roads are quite straight, but you'll find that one goes round. They built a kink in it to go around the hill, so they obviously respected what they saw.
And they decided not to touch that, thank goodness.
Yeah, and I think what they probably saw was something more like a pyramid than a chalk mound. All that was just like a couple of thousand years earlier, but I think it looked more impressive then. But I just think that any archive or there might be a mosaic underneath the earth somewhere there that might be discovered sometime, that will a picture of Silbury Hill and it back in whatever that period was.
So this sort of destroying, even if it was accidental and even if it was a natural thing, this happened a long time ago. You just think that today they're just trying to cover it up?
Yeah, well, yes, I think there's this thing called the Younger Dryas Global Event. This is what it's called. This big disaster that happened 10,500 years ago. And there's in my book I mentioned it, and I forget the name of the guy who two men who wrote about this destruction and explained in great detail how the evidence for this event, this huge flood and this huge disaster back about 10,500 years ago. So it's just somehow they've managed to cover up and just create distractions to what actually happened. So all the way through, you're just finding that it's been kept covered up or hidden. And of course, this is my speculation. I can't see any other. I've gone through, analysed all sorts of how we've evolved. This is why I'm interested in Maria's idea of a missing link, because I can't see anywhere in that short space of time where we moved from the cave. You talk about Maria talked about Stone Age.
Again, that's what they've told us, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's how they've maybe have covered up history. It's by telling you all these things when it's impossible. You know, they're making it look like we've come from mud hats and we were and all that, you know, like, and pickaxes, when really they're covering up the fact that we were far more advanced.
Yeah, well, they should have leapt from Homo sapien to human, to an advanced human being, with no missing. And they try to think, oh, there's a missing link somewhere, which they can't find, because there's no missing link. It was just a genetic change that was made again about this time 13,000 years ago to Homo sapien, which didn't change them much physically, but changed them, give an intelligent gene. And we could do this today with a chimpanzee. We could probably genetically engineer a chimpanzee to make him more intelligent. And I think that's what happened back then. And this
she was saying that the elongated ones did breed with us.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, this whole situation was it controlled? Was this some kind of controlled development that they did? The alien visitors, as I call it, alien visitor, the extraterrestrial, manipulated the Homo sapien genetic mitochondrial DNA and produced this smart Homo sapien. I call it highly intelligent Homo sapien. Of course, sadly, when this disaster happened, we became the planet of the intelligent Homo sapiens, namely us. But we didn't have the leaders. We didn't have the knowledge. Was all kind of destroyed, except where we knew some of it was hidden and taken through the centuries by a group which I call the elites. But the knowledge has always been coming through the generations via our genetic, I call transgenerational memory gene. We're all inheriting information, knowledge coming through the centuries. And touching on that slightly, Maria, talking about your past lives, and of course that past lives is in your memory. So there's a science developing called epigenetics, where they reckon in the future they will be able to find out what's in your memory.
I find it incredible that these elongated skull people were so short as well.
Sorry?
I find it amazing that these elongated skull people were short.
Yeah, well, that's how they've evolved, and there may well be those with elongated skulls down in Peru. Maybe Brian will be able to tell you that are maybe quite tall. It's all very intriguing. Yeah, it's all very intriguing.
Yeah, I did actually talk to him, but he's out on a hike today because obviously he's not at home. He's gone to America. He's gone to a convention, and he just said, "I can't join you because I'm out on a hike."
Busy guy.
He's going to be hiking somewhere, isn't he? He's going to look at something.
Yeah, well, he's busy. I mean, I had that spell a few years ago where you were very difficult to get hold of me, but recent times now I'm focusing on things like playing golf.
And you're in a tournament tomorrow.
I'm in a tournament tomorrow, yes. But
well, we very much appreciate that you come on Sun and Moon and that you're our friend now. So we appreciate that. Appreciate all your knowledge, and it's great that somebody like, I don't mean to say this again, but someone who's a little bit older who understands that we're just living in a bunch of lies.
Yeah,
I find it a bit frustrating that you're uncovering stuff about here, and unfortunately, it's all lies.
I think like I said, Patricia mentioned earlier. It's just my piece of the jigsaw, and I had you go through so far, and other people will come along and put their pieces together, and at some point things will start to fit, and you begin to see, like a jigsaw, you start to see the picture more clearly. The more pieces you put in the puzzle, the more you begin to see, and I think there are more and more people like ourselves and Maria around now that are just helping others to find pieces of the puzzle, and I think it's quite exciting as we both of us.
Do you ever think that the elongated people were the ones that built the pyramids?
They could well be. Can
you imagine it then going there in their extra? She said they had an extra sense, that basically they could go, stone, come here, whoop, there's the stone.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. whatever you think or imagine, this is what happens when you go back to watch things like Star Trek and so on. Things that are happening there are beginning to become science fiction, become science fact. And so I think some of the things you're talking about now, well, could that have happened? In the likelihood is possibly yes. But what I'm certain of is that there were machines flying about our planet 13,000 years ago. They could look from above, they could see where the different locations were, the different complexes, the Giza complex, the Wessex complex. They could see the Nazca lines. They could see different places that they could locate, either by visual, seeing the shape on the ground, or by
Yes, have you been on a hangout with Angel?
by signal. By signals coming from the pyramids. Sorry.
Do you remember the name Angel?
Yes. Yes.
Well, he also thought the ones in Mexico, they look like landing platforms. So he would say the same as you, that he believes that they were flying around in the pyramid time. We're not talking about the Egyptians. We're talking about the pyramid times. They were flying around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but your establishment archaeologists will tell you, well, they could have made balloons out of sheepskin and stuff, or goat skin, or some kind of animal skin, and gone up. But this is more controlled. This is the wind would take in different directions. Scale, works that are designed to detailed, and it couldn't be done by that. It's just done by really sophisticated flying machine technology, computer type equipment, or whatever. Maybe, it's probably more advanced than we have. We think we're advanced now with computers, as we thought our generations thought they were advanced with, I don't know, electricity.
That's what I've said, isn't it? Like, we think we're so advanced now, but we're not. No. I want to know about these other people. I want to know where we come from. Yeah. I want to know what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, this is the best solution I have is, as I said, is one of the potential solutions is written in my book, The Silbury Dawning, and I think that I've found a lot of evidence to support this idea that we are basically of ET origin. But
and there are another set of people that can go to prison is all the historical societies and that for lying. And when that lady from that video, when she was at Silbury Hill, she could have told the truth. Yeah. All they did was make sure to cover it up. I'm not even sure when they did what they did, they want it to collapse. And they went in there, they wanted it to collapse.
Well, they certainly have it blocked out. You can't get it's pretty well. I mean, because I did say at the time when to the tourist to English heritage, why not leave a part of the tunnel open, and you could put a big perspex. But you get to these places like not Florida, San Diego, you can go through a tunnel and see sharks swimming across swimming over your head. There are obviously hundreds of thousands of tons.
That would make it unstable and all that. Is that what they'd say?
Well, as I said, this is obviously thousands of tons worth of water flowing over the top of this particular structure. So clearly, you could easily push in maybe 20 feet or 20 yards of this kind of curvature perspex. Is obviously very strong, and people could walk in so far into the hill and see this line I was talking about, this butter texture line between the base and the structure itself, and they could see other things that may be interesting to them. They obviously wouldn't allow that because it would be too say it was health and safety.
Do you know, I'd like that sign outside Silbury Hill taken down when it just says it's an earth mound and it's 4,500 years old. I'd like it taken down, and the truth, I'd like it to say pyramid.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the exciting thing about what the stuff that Maria and I do is that I think at some point in the not too distant future, they will admit it's a pyramid.
Well, I told you, if you look up Pyramids of the World, it's in the website, Pyramids of the World. It's there. It's on the main page.
Yeah, well, because of me, some of my contacts, I talked to them, and they put in the fact that Silbury Hill's a pyramid. And this is obviously based on the evidence I've found, and I've submitted it, and I've talked to these guys at Bosnia, and I talked to them in China, I talked to them in Egypt, whatever. And they're quite clear. They agree with me from the evidence I've provided that that Silbury Hill's a pyramid, and of course the more information I provide, and the more the English heritage guys try to discredit it, the more daft ideas they have to come up for suggesting it's still a mound of chalk. and they can't explain why there's pieces of sarsen stone on the top of the hill, large pieces of stone on the top of the hill, and they've all gone. They've taken them off the hill now, and they've disappeared.
Well, to hide the truth. But I used to go up there and sit on there on solstice day and things.
Yeah.
And I don't ever remember there being a hole in the top because I walked on it.
Well, you were lucky because the guy, Nigel, I've forgotten his second name, Nigel, he was a reporter on the Marlborough Times, and he went up there just after it collapsed. And there was a shaft that was dug by, I think, one of the people that Maria mentioned. I've just forgotten the name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And it's amazing that nobody was killed, because a lot of people like you sat on that hill, but that was fragile for many, 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 many years. And then all of a sudden, because of I think a lot of rain or something happened, the whole thing collapsed. So it was very lucky that there was nobody on there, because it was a disaster ready, waiting to happen, because the shaft that was dug down, I think, a few hundred years earlier.
Do you think that's a natural shaft, though? Do you think it was?
No, it was a man-made shaft.
Pardon?
It was a man-made shaft. It was dug down by, because obviously people are digging into the Silbury Hill. There's been a few attempts at digging into the side of the hill, and there's one attempt made at digging down from the top of the hill. And I have the details somewhere. It's a pity Maria wasn't on the.
Was it like about 18 something or something? They tried to dig down.
Yeah, I've got it somewhere, but it doesn't matter. But there was somebody about in that time frame. God, it's annoying. Anyway, he dug down, and obviously it had been kind of filled up and so on. But this is part of the hill collapsing. Even back a few hundred years ago, was collapsing because of all these tunnels that were being dug into it.
Must be annoying for you, because you obviously want that place completely safeguarded. I'm just wondering whether they've done something inside, so over time it's going to sag and then collapse.
Yeah, it's got to the point where they've kind of hidden anything that, so there was blocks on the top, which they've admitted to, but they won't explain that, chalk blocks that are actually to a dimension, a size, and all sorts of other things. But the purpose of it now, the energy it's producing and so on, probably still trying to, as I said before, when the guys went down the shaft, some of the crop circle guys went down, and when it collapsed that night, they knew about it. They went down and they found their cameras were damaged, and they found a bolt of light came out, a ball of light, a capacitor discharge, and they also saw sharp edges, like it had been a room inside the.
Wow. Inside. Also, there's footage of lots of orbs being there as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the Stone Hill. Just about to see it. I think that's the DVD. The only one that I think is available now. And you can just about see. No, we can't see very well where the camera was. The phone was damaged by the energy inside the hill.
Oh wow!
And there's a bit.
Do you find it a little bit frustrating in a sense that you can't forge forward? Because obviously in Bosnia they've admitted now that those are pyramids. So why can't they admit this one's a pyramid? And Merlin's Mound's something to do with it. And well, what did you say? There are mounds at Oxford, University. There are mounds in other places like Merlin's Mound.
Well, they can't, because they say that the establishment, the archaeological or the educational, the professorships, all these professors in like Cardiff University, there's a row of them that go through from today's one, Jim Leary to Atkinson and so on. They were all professors at Cardiff University. And so they can't actually contradict what these guys have said, because they don't want to, or they can't, or whatever. It's only like somebody like me comes along and says, well, it's not a pile of chalk, it's actually a pyramid. And as hopefully, as Maria just said, the new guys coming through, the new archaeologists coming through are a bit freer now. They'll be able to come out and say, and not be stuck with that rigors of the previous generation, or the ideas of the. They're actually coming out now and saying, oh, wait a minute, this may be a reason why they blocked off Silbury Hill, because anybody, proper archaeologist, let's say from a university going into Silbury Hill, if it had been left open, would have come to the conclusions that I came to. But they stopped doing it because it's blocked.
Yeah, not just that. You believe that Silbury Hill's one of the oldest pyramids as well, don't you? Because of what it's made of. It's not made of stones, it's made of chalk.
Yeah, and this is where this is where I think, the intriguing bit that where Maria and I would discuss, we don't know, we can't argue. I almost think that was probably one of the first things that was built. Because you need to have an energy source built to create some kind of magnetic field and some kind of bionosphere within the magnetic field for crops to grow and things to exist. Like if it's an ET type civilization to come in, and obviously it's a different atmospheric condition. So that would be what Silbury Hill provided. And as that developed, then as the offspring developed and were able to evolve into the Earth's atmosphere, then they could start to build, maybe make this even bigger field, or start to develop the bigger and bigger site for whatever reasons they
Do you think there are any more pyramids like that? I mean, obviously Merlin's Mound is a smaller one, and I'm actually wondering what all the mounds are now, because even if you go to Stonehenge, there are these mounds. They don't talk about these mounds just behind Stonehenge. There are mounds there. Yeah,
there's lots that are flattened and have gone, which you know about, because I know some old, no longer with us, but some of the older archaeologists when I first came down here about 30 years ago had mentioned other pyramid shapes. I know there's one on Marlborough Golf Club on the 13th tee, and I remember first going there and stepping off the tee to go across to the other side of the tee. They say, "Oh, don't go over there." And I say, "Well, what's that? What's sacred ground?" And then I've quite a bit more, and it's been a mound there, and there's been obviously another.
Yeah, because they're burial mounds. That's what we're talking.
There's a burial mound, but it looked like it'd probably been something else. It could have been a burial mound, but I think it's more likely to, in the structure of things. I like to have lined it up actually with Merlin's Mound and that mound at Marlborough. So I must do that on a map to see if they line up. Be curious to, but the thing is, it doesn't matter if they've destroyed Silbury Hill. It doesn't matter what they've done. It's the fact is that the truth will come out through other avenues and through other areas, and I'm still convinced that somehow something that they know about, that they've got pictures of, or they've got evidence of, somebody will find it and say, "Oh, wait a minute, Silbury Hill. Oh, this was a pyramid." But the archaeological establishment at the moment is not ready to do that. But I think they're rapidly losing credibility over quite a number of things, such as the Great Pyramid being used as a tomb for pharaohs. That's beginning to become debunked.
Have you done a massive walk round there to see if you can see any other pyramids?
I did many years ago, and there is a if you go up the road that takes you from Beckhampton roundabout to Devizes, there's like a little racetrack going around there. If you walk up that bit, there's a whole string of things that's gone up there. And if you come out of up through Avery Trouslow, there's a string of, from Avery through Avery Trouslow, there's another string of mounds that you can walk up and you can see as you head up towards gosh, where's the name of where the big obelisk is on the top of the hill?
Oh, I think I know what you mean. On the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Quite big. I mean, how old do you reckon that is? That's huge up on that hill.
Yeah, well, I think that's fairly new. It's not an old thing, but it's again, right. It's an indicator of something. See, these things are put on places where there's been something before. I keep making this point that there was something more important there before, or something interesting before. Then somebody comes along and thinks, "Oh yeah, that was a really important area. I better put something really important on top of it." And of course, they put this. It could be a church, it could be a cathedral, it could be a obelisk, it could be anything.
I know this probably isn't your forte as well, but what's your take on the white horses then? Because for anybody who doesn't live in the UK, around where we're talking of Silbury Hill and Avebury, around there, Marlborough, where there's Merlin's Mound, there's all these chalk horses on the side of hills and things, which we seen from the sky.
Yeah. Yes, it's just very interesting how it's. Well, I'll give you an example, really. Maybe again a very silly example, because I always like to throw out something just of intriguing. Is today there's this huge fascination with tattoos. Everyone has a tattoo, or most people almost have a tattoo, and so on. And again, I believe that's come back from this ancient civilization where probably they'd have to grade people, they'd have to work as if they were genetically engineering people. You got to get some, like you you have some cleverer people, you have people who are stronger people, you have whatever, and they probably did some kind of form of selection, and to recognise who they were or whatever, they might have some kind of mark put on them to know who they were and where they were and which part of the structure they were, or which part of the building, who was building what, and so on. And I think again that got into our unconscious memory, and it's flowed through the generations and the generations, and then all of a sudden it pops out that it's a good idea to have a tattoo. But you wonder, where does having a tattoo come from? It's a little intriguing thing I've just thrown in as a.
I mean, maybe the white horses are another time. I mean, they are strange, aren't they? These chalk things. I mean, how deep are these chalk things? I mean, the oldest one is Oxford, isn't it? The oldest one is at Oxford, which is actually in Berkshire. But nearly all these white horses are in Wiltshire, which is a different county, which is the county that Silbury, Glastonbury, Stonehenge, Avebury, all in that county with all these white horses. But the eldest one is near Oxford, and that's in Berkshire.
Yeah, again, it needs somebody.
Oh, that's Oxfordshire, isn't it? Sorry, Oxfordshire. Whoops.
Yeah. I think there's been a lot more. I think it's just that some have even disappeared. I mean, there's been a few that have been created in more modern times. But again, just the fact that there's an idea of having this kind of shape on a hill, where did that original idea come from? And maybe some of them have always been there, and they've been kind of reconstructed and put back. And every generation said, "Oh, look at this is beginning to fade a bit. We want to replace it, or whatever." So maybe it goes back and back, like mythology, like ideas and stories. It just goes back and back over the thousands of years. So maybe where the white horse at Westbury has always been a white horse at Westbury. I don't know.
Can I ask you something? I know what you're going to say probably, but I'll ask you anyway. This time of the timeline, do you really believe that they are this old? Because I just don't know how, if we can. It's not that I don't believe they're old or older, but it's just the timelines. They've just lied so badly about so much. How do we not know these things are only 1,000 years old?
Well, again, I suppose it's one of these things. There's a thing in Pyramid Hill. It's called Pyramid. Sorry,
the human race keeps being reset and reset and reset.
Well, it's something. If you live in an environment, forgetting obviously today with the communication and so on, if you're in an environment that's fairly, rural and so on, and it's just there, and then you grow up with it, you see it as a child, and you grow up and you become older, and then it deteriorates. Oh well, better the whole gang will get together, and it's part of your heritage to preserve it. So you go and preserve it, and this happens generation after generation. That this thing gets preserved. It's only as we've got into the last 100 years that we're maybe less concerned or less interested in preserving things. We'd rather build a road through it or do something, which is, you could argue with that. Fair enough. But
they don't care what they do, though, to that, do they?
No. But yeah, so what I mean is, you're right. Some of these things have stayed put because obviously there's been no need to build a road or an airport or whatever on that example of Westbury, the White Horse at Westbury. But there's another one there at Cherrill Hill. There's a white horse at Cherrill. That's the one. That's near Avebury. And so yeah.
As also I said that we had Martin Leakey on, and he's looking at even just paintings, pictures. His assumption is that these churches, the older ones, they're machines as well. They also were machines. The big old churches. Yeah, they're all machines. They're all usually built on the top of pyramids anyway, aren't they? What was a pyramid?
Absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the spiral, I mean, okay, you've got crosses on them now because they're to link them to Christianity or whatever. But maybe at the time they were just points where they were energy. They're transmitting some kind of signal. So yeah, could well be. I mean, these are probably generating some kind of energy and transmitting some sort of signal or some sort of information. Yeah. Completely viable, yeah. It's when you start.
Can I just ask you? You said about Mary Bennett that she was waiting to get her book out. It looks like it's out.
Oh, bah! Gosh, she got it out. Yeah. Oh, good for her. I must send her. Must go around and see her.
By Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers. Is that it? The moon landing, and there's another one. Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers. Book Mary Bennett, David P.S.
The Whistleblowers. That must be a new one. I don't know. What I mean, the Dark Moon is the one I told you. That's been out for a long time.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah, Dark Moon's on it. Yeah, but how old is the Whistleblowers? Is that a new book? Does it say?
I don't know. I just put it in, and it's brought up all this stuff. The Dark Moon and the Apollo Whistleblower. Oh, that's by. It says by David S. Percy.
Yeah.
And Mary D.M. Bennett.
Yeah. They both collaborated on that. That's right. But she's like, she doesn't believe in the moon landing, and it's all a conspiracy. And
it is though, John. It is. It's true.
No, I like to wind that up because I spent a lot of time working. I worked at a company called Intel, and we were into electronics, and we're developing circuits to land, for flying about in space and so on. So
it is hard with all the indoctrination we have. I do know that you're pretty open, considering you're the first person in the UK to announce that Silbury Hill is a pyramid.
Yeah, well, that's my claim to fame, as well as Maria's got lots of. As you've had Maria on, she's explained a lot of the things that she's helped to try to clarify, if you like, or put forward a different explanation. And we'll see if it stands the test of time. It may well be found that somebody else will come up with some other. But I definitely convinced that the evidence I discovered, to me, Silbury Hill was definitely built as a pyramid.
Just very quickly, because obviously we're going to finish.
Yeah.
We have been here for 3 hours, but I bet you hated it when they were doing all that testing on Silbury Hill, banging these things in and doing these sonic booms, and I bet you hated it. Well,
to me, it was just it was the wrong thing at the wrong time. As I've said often, with these ancient structures, ancient things, you've got to preserve them for the next generation to come. Because we don't have the technology, they don't understand what they're doing because they don't have the technology. And I think if you don't understand what you're doing to a particular monument or a particular experiment, then preserve it for the next generation or the next generation to come to have a closer look at it with the newer technology. And but they didn't do that. They just gung-ho. They just went in and dug in, and things collapsed. They filled that with polystyrene or God knows what it was, the stuff they put in, and just a real mess. And but again, maybe in the future they will find equipment that can get in and clear out this stuff and have another look at it. I suppose at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it's a pile of chalk or a pyramid. To civilization, it's just the fact that it's another piece of information that shows that there's cover-ups going on, which we've been talking about, off different points of the afternoon. There's lots of cover-ups going on, and lots of distractions, and lots of things to divert us from trying to work out what we're all trying to work out. Where have we been and where are we going?
They don't want us to find out where we come from and piece it all together. All you're going to show is that they've been lying. Yeah.
Well, they've been just for whatever their reasons are. There's just been diverting us from knowing, and I don't know why. Why wouldn't they want us to know where humanity began?
I know, it's crazy.
It's a fundamental question. You think, well, and nobody seems to be bothered to think, oh, that's a good question. How did humanity begin? They just think, oh, well, there's a Homo sapien, there's a missing link, and then humanity began. Where? How? It just seems to have been this amazing person changed from somebody who was smashing up rocks or something to this guy who can
and the elongated
design striped toothpaste and put them and.
They change it again as well. They change the timeline. They change our history again. Especially it's just anybody coming into the chat room. We had Maria Wheatley with us earlier on. Unfortunately, she had a really bad computer connection and she came through my phone. She's gone, and we've been talking to John Cowrie here, and he's a person who's been in Silbury Hill and knows that Silbury Hill is a pyramid. But basically, the elongated people were very short, 5 foot, 5'5" maximum, because you've seen their bones. And not just that, the Long Barrow, the Kennet Long Barrow, which is next, well, it's just basically down the road from Silbury Hill, that was built by them. But the things like the stone circles and the other things, they were built by people who had heads like us, but not the long barrows. They were built by the elongated head people. And these are all different time scales. So I've learned a lot this afternoon, and it's been really, really interesting. I wish that she could have stayed on longer, because it was, I really enjoyed talking with her.
Yeah, it's a shame because she obviously didn't get wanted to have the visual link so that she maybe show things and stuff, because she's. But again, my parting shot to you and anyone listening is to get down, if you're in this country, obviously, or you get an opportunity. She does travel around the world. Get a chance to listen to her, see her presentation. It's always got loads of wonderful photographs and drawings, and it's just excellent. So I highly recommend that you get a chance to see her. So hopefully, hopefully maybe see some of you at Glastonbury Symposium this year, at the end of July. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you get on with the rest of your. Let you get on and with the rest of your day.
Oh, I've got to go back to work shortly. It's a bit annoying, but anyway, such is life. But John, as always, it is a great big pleasure for us. You know we love you and appreciate you, and that's why we talk to you and ask you to come back. And thank you so much for being on our channel. If you just want to wait 1 minute, we'll say goodbye to you offline. We're going to say goodbye now to everybody. Patricia, do you want to say goodbye?
I'm going to say goodbye. Sorry, Karen.
It's all right, my darling.
Yeah, we love you, John. Yeah, thank you for your time today. And everyone in the chat room, love you. I love you, Karen.
Oh, I love you too, Patricia. And we love John. We lost Astral, by the way, bad connection.
Oh, yes, we lost Astral.
We're back. What's the day today? We're back on, it's Tuesday today, isn't it? I've lost a day. And we're back on Thursday with John Smith, Global Light, and Roxanne Glenn. Anyway, thank you so much. Mwah, to the panel, mwah, to the chat room. Goodbye from us.